What is up, everybody? Welcome to the new show, Stat Diggers, where we're going to take a balls deep dive into the stats for the upcoming card. Really wanted to do this new show. It's something else that nobody else out there is doing. Nobody else is going to, into the stats like this. It's something to kind of get our feet wet for the upcoming card. And, going live on Sunday, I think, is something that's a game changer as well. Not a lot of people are going to get content out this early. So really excited for the show as a whole. Basically we're going to go through the fight, get into the stats quite a bit. And we have the stat guy with me, Uncle Weezy. Our Uncle Weezy here, who is, a big stat guy himself. I'm a really big stat guy, but this guy has a database like something you've never seen before. And he's, ever so kind to make this matchup template, which is very easy on the eye, kind of go through it as we go along. So I'll kick it to you, Uncle Weezy. First of all, are you excited for the new show? And second of all, are you excited for this card?
I'm really excited for the new show. This is to be on Pub Sports is a great honor, and I'm really glad that what I've been doing already on my YouTube channel has been resonating with people. And I wanted to do something with you here, and kind of give everybody a little bit of an edge. I keep all these stats, but it's no good for me to keep them all to myself. MMA betting's hard. These bookies are shaving a lot of people's asses out there. I would prefer it not be mine, right?
Exactly.
Why should we lose our money to them? And, your Uncle Weezy's got you hooked up here. I got a lot of stats for you. I've got, there's like 100 data points just on each page alone, and we're doing 14 different fights. So, a lot of us haven't watched tape on these fights that are coming up yet, but we could take a look at, we got all the statistics for each fight on one page. We can kind of go through them. And hopefully after, doing a little 8 to 10 minute bit on each fight, it'll give you an idea of maybe which way you're leaning, and then you can start looking at the tape, and you can make a much better decision, make an educated decision, and let's start winning some bets, start winning our money from these bookies.
Dude, 100%. You mentioned it, the tape's probably the most important thing, but I think the stats is important as well. The stats, the matchup, I think you got to put it all together and then, do your analysis and make your pick. But yeah, if you guys do enjoy this content, if you do like this new show, please leave a like. Let us know you like it. If you don't like it, you can also let us know, but hopefully you guys do like it. Hopefully it does provide some value to you as well. So I just want to shout out the chat everywhere. What's up, Melon in the chat? Gaming Wolf in the chat as well. Got some underdogs for next week. Yeah, I think there's some live dogs for sure. Billy in the chat. Uncle Weezy Brady. What's up, Billy? How you doing? Nigel in the chat. What's up, crew? Hope everyone profited last night. It was a really solid night for me on DraftKings. Betting was almost good, but Mason Jones fiasco, which sucks. MMA Gangster in the chat. Uncle Weezy, Brady, The Legacy. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good show, man.
That's right.
So, Josh in the chat, we like it. There we go. We like it. All right, so we'll get into it here. But, let's get those likes up. Let's try to get to 100 likes for the first show. That would be awesome. Not sure how many people are going to show up, but maybe we can make it, definitely a weekly thing, and hopefully people do enjoy it. So we'll start off with this fight. We have the first fight of the night, Carlos Felipe going against Jake Collier. We have Felipe, who is 26 years old. He has 6 foot, 75-inch reach, coming out of Brazil. Going against Jake Collier, who is 32 years old, 6'3", 78-inch reach, going out of the United States. We'll take a look at the last 5 fights we have for Felipe. He beat Justin Taffa in a fight that was very, very close. It beat Yorgan De Castro, lost to Sergey Spivak. Those are kind of his notable wins and losses there. As far as Jake Collier, he beat Jean Vellante, lost to Tom Aspinall. Those are both at heavyweight, and then beat Marcel Fortuna, which I believe was at light heavyweight. So he did take a big layoff, came up to heavyweight as of late. So Uncle Weezy, what do you got here?
Well, we'll start off with the pro experience for both of these guys, and we can see that Collier is the more experienced fighter, both in the UFC and overall. Collier started off as a middleweight and then moved up to light heavyweight, and now he's a heavyweight, and now he kind of looks like the before picture for a Weight Watchers ad. That dude used to look like an Abercrombie and Fitch model when he was at 185. He was like super cut, and he's always had nice hands. But we can check it out here. 124 minutes of career cage time for Collier as opposed to 70 for Felipe. And we got 17 pro fights for Collier as opposed to 11 for Felipe. See, both of these guys, are kind of getting out of the cage fairly early with the average fight times there at 6.36 and 7.29. And Collier's had a longer career. So Collier definitely has the experience edge, pros and UFC. And if we look at the UFC, we see that, 8 fights for Collier as opposed to 3, almost twice as much cage time. And then the average fight time for Felipe, he's been a decision in all of his fights. So that's something we got to note. So we can look at the finish stats here, see how these guys are winning fights or losing fights. And we see that Felipe overall has finished 60% of his wins by KO, but he's never subbed anybody. And in the UFC, he's never finished anybody. And Collier, 25% of his overall wins by sub, 42% overall by KO. And Collier has won 75% of his UFC fights by KO. So that's 3 knockouts out of 4 wins for him. And when we see how they lose fights, Felipe's never been finished either. And we got Collier's been subbed 20% of the time and knocked out 60% of the time. So we see that 80% of Collier's losses, he's getting finished. And then if we go to the striking statistics, we'll see here Carlos Felipe is averaging in the UFC 4.42 significant strikes per minute out of 9.78 for a 45.23% striking accuracy. And we see similar numbers over on the Collier side with 4.92 landed with 11.96 attempted, 41.13% striking accuracy. Felipe has not shown power thus far. No knockdowns in the UFC, while Collier, about 0.5% of the time he lands a significant strike, that his opponent goes down. So 0.38 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Collier. So for heavyweights, neither one of these guys are bringing what we would normally think of as heavyweight style power here. Defensively, Carlos Felipe eats more strikes than he deals out. He lands 4.42, eats 4.6 out of 8.82 for a 47.86% striking defense. Collier a little stronger defensively, 4.09 out of 8.81 for 53% striking defense. We got Collier has been knocked down 0.1 times per 15 minutes, and Felipe, with that Easter Island statue of a head of his, has never been knocked down. Dude, some of the shots that dude takes is incredible. Like you could sneak up behind him and hit him in the head with a shovel, and I don't think he'd go down. So this one is kind of looking, like these people who like these heavyweight overs. This one might be a good one because the guy who has knocked people down is facing somebody in Felipe who's never been knocked down. And then in Collier, he's been actually knocked down before, but Felipe's never knocked anyone down. If we go into the grappling here, we're not going to see a whole lot for these guys. Felipe 0 for 1 on his takedown attempts in 3 fights. So he's only attempted 1 takedown in 3 fights where, he likes to stand and bang. Collier, same thing, 3 for 13, but only 13 takedown attempts in 8 fights, only 3 takedowns in 8 fights, 0.57 takedowns per 15 minutes. So, neither one of these guys grapples offensively a lot. I expect this to be a boxing match. And if you look at the defensive grappling numbers, 70% takedown defense for Felipe, 67.74 for Collier. Felipe has been taken down 1 time per 15 minutes, and Collier taken down almost twice that at 1.91. 22% control time against for Felipe, only 19% for Collier. So, but I think the striking statistics are a little more valuable here in terms of this fight because neither one of these guys spends a lot of time grappling. Strength of schedule. So the strength of schedule metric that I have here on the matchup template calculates the ratio of wins to losses of a fighter's opponents. So if we look at Carlos Felipe over here overall, we see he's got a 1 ratio, which means that his opponents have 1 win for every loss that they have. So he's averaging fighting a 500 opponent with only 2.67 total fights. While if you look at Collier, his ratio is 0.83, so he's actually fighting a slightly lower brand of opponent, but with more experience at 5.25 total fights for an average record of his opponent having 2.38 wins and 2.88 losses. So you can tell neither one of these guys is fighting a majorly high level of competition thus far. And as far as wins go, Felipe 1.5 ratio in his wins, Collier a 0.82 ratio in his wins. So even though Collier's opponents are a little more experienced with 5 total fights, Felipe's opponents have a slightly better win-loss record, but not a lot there either. And then if we look at the losses, we see that both of these guys have actually lost to not great competition with less than a 1 ratio of their losses. So The strength of schedule, both of these guys have been fighting lower level opponents, is what this is telling me. So what do you think? What do you think with these numbers? Where are you going with this fight? Got any early leans? Brady, I'm not hearing you right now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Anyway, like I was saying, like it's a weird fight because Collier, came up a weight class, took like a 2-year layoff, and he did not look great in the scales. And I was like really high on Tom Aspinall in that fight, and then he looks good against John Vellante. And I do believe I picked John Vellante in that fight. I didn't bet him because I would never bet that fight, but Vellante was like minus 200. And Collier did pull up the upset there. It's just I don't really want to overrate that win on Vellante too much because Vellante, he's not great himself towards the end of his career, all that good stuff. So we'll take a look at the odds here. And we have Felipe, who is minus 190. Collier is plus 165. Felipe actually opened up minus 312. Wow. So money is flowing in on Jake Collier, and I can kind of see why. This fight probably does go to decision. It's probably somewhat competitive. So I see people are taking shots on the dog, and I think that's fine. But what I was kind of looking at, and you brought it up with the power metrics over there, both guys, good chins. Both guys, not the most power. Collier had some power. Maybe it doesn't translate to heavyweight as much. But I think the fight goes to decision, or even the over could be something to look at. But the odds makers are all over this one. Fight goes to decision, minus 125. But even then, I don't hate that line. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to bet this fight, but if I was to bet it, I probably would take the over rather than the value shot on Collier. I think it's a pick 'em to me in my mind. So yeah, there probably is value on it, but ultimately a fight I do want to stay away from.
Yeah. And just one more thing, that Vellante fight, Collier's hands look great in that fight, but then, the only thing I can remember is Vellante getting what somebody in one of your chats and one of your earlier live streams called Vellante choked. When you're basically beating the hell out of your opponent and you get choked out from the top, just because you're completely exhausted. So, and then Vellante, the other fight that he had after that one was even less impressive. So, we don't want to overrate that win for Collier, but at the same time, Felipe's not exactly knocking the cover off the ball either. So, yeah, so maybe some value on the underdog, maybe some value on the over, or the fight goes to decision is what I'm thinking.
Yep, I like it. Shadow Blood Pirate, what's up, Shadow? Thanks for hanging out. Thoughts on Leon Edwards, Figueiredo, and Jamahal? I would personally not parlay Jamahal Hill, and we'll talk about why, but I do like the other two as parlay pieces. This is a pass for me. Felipe fights are my kryptonite. Non-consistent with either. Yeah, it should be a pass, but if you do want to take a shot on the dog, I would say there's some value there. Figures in a parlay, sketch it after wins. What's up, Preston? How you doing? Felipe and Collier are two guys who aren't cracking the top 15 anytime soon. I agree, but who knows how shallow heavyweight is. Yeah, they're not both great. Fade on DK, I agree. Mm-hmm. We are back. Don't know the stats, but there is a great historical trend when dealing with rematches for previous opponents in championship fights. The edge heavily favors the first fight winner to continue. And then other than that, but yeah, so should be an interesting fight. I'm not overly looking forward to Collier versus Felipe, but it should be fun. All right, next we have Fares Ziam going against Luigi Vandermeeny. Cashed a nice bet on Vandermeeny his last fight against Justin Iari. Was not expecting to knock him out, but he went out there and knocked him out in the first round. So Ziam, he's 24 years old, 6'1", 75-inch reach, coming out of France. We have Vandermeeny, who is 25 years old, 5'8", 73-inch reach, coming out of Brazil. Vandermeeny does sound like an Italian last name, and I do believe his nickname has something to do with him being Italian as well. Take a look at the last 5 fights that are notable for Ziam. He had a win against Malarkey in a fight that a lot of people thought he lost. Had a loss to Don Madge, a very, very bad loss on his record as well. And then we have Luigi Vandermeeny. He faced Justin Iari in his last fight, knocked him out, and then lost to Eliza Zaleski dos Santos. I went back and watched that fight the other day, and he was like really close to submitting Zaleski. He had his arms around his neck. I thought he was Zaleski was about to tap, but Zaleski got out and then ultimately did knock out Vandermeeny in that fight. But we got to remember that Vandermeeny did take that fight on short notice, I believe, and I think it was up a weight class as well. So interesting fight for me. I'm pretty high on Vandermeeny, to be honest. Not so high on Ziam. So what do you got here in the stats, Uncle Weezy?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because, we don't have a whole lot in the stats because each one of these guys really only has two UFC fights. But if we look at the pro experience, we see Ziam with a significant advantage. I mean, Vendramini, 10 pro fights and only 35 minutes of cage time. This dude fights like he's double parked. I mean, and you look at these guys, 5 years of experience for Vendramini, 6 years for Fares. So they're both fairly early in their UFC careers here and pro careers. Two UFC fights for each of them. 1 win, 1 loss for each of them. Vendramini's fights are ending quickly, and Ziam is going to decision. If we look at the finish stats, overall a 100% finish rate for Luigi. 44% by sub, 56% by knockout. 100% of his UFC wins, which there's only one of, by knockout. And then we see that Ziam, 45% overall knockout, 36% sub rate. So we're talking an 81% finish rate for Fares Ziam. And when he loses, he's been subbed 2 out of his 3 losses. And we see that Vendramini, in his 1 loss, he's been knocked out. So when we look at the striking statistics here, we don't have a whole lot because, like I say, there's only 2 fights. But if you want to see Fares Ziam striking, you gotta go back to his pre-UFC tape because he's been grapple fucked by both of his opponents in the UFC so far. And there's a reason for that. He's got really slick striking. Man, he's long. Look at him, 6'1", 75-inch reach. The reason Don Madge grapple fucked him and the reason Malarkey grapple fucked him is because he would have pieced those motherfuckers up if they would have left it at range. So let's start with the striking stats here. 1.9 out of 4 for Fares Ziam. So super low volume, but there's a reason for that. 47.5% striking accuracy, while Vendramini 2.26 out of 5.31 for 42.5%. Luigi Vendramini showing ridiculous power for a lightweight with almost a 6% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. But, that's only in 2 fights. Yeah. So 1.99 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So he's definitely showing power. Defensively, Ziam, 66% striking defense in 2 fights, only absorbing 1.37 strikes per minute, and he's dealing out 1.9. So that's a pretty good ratio. It's low output, but that's because the nature of the fights that he's been in so far. And then we see that Vendramini gets hit exactly as much as he's been hit, 2.26 per minute. 59% striking defense. That's also excellent. And he's been knocked down almost 6% of the strikes landed against him. If we look at the grappling stats here, we see Vendramini 0 for 6 on his total takedowns, while Ziam 1 for 9 for 11%. He averages a half a takedown per 15 minutes. 12% control time offensively for Ziam. 35% control time offensively for Vendramini. But this is definitely a small sample size. Yep. All right, but then let's look at the defense. Fares Ziam, 65% takedown defense. He has had 23 takedowns attempted against him in 2 fights.
Crazy.
Isn't that nuts? I mean, people have to look at that. I think there's a lot of people that are out there saying that this guy's a bum, and it's easy to look at the numbers and not realize that he hasn't boxed anybody yet. He's been put up against the cage. He's been hugged. 55% control time he's given up. So he hasn't even been able to do much. And I don't know if Vendramini is that style of a fighter. He's definitely got subs. 44% of his wins are by sub. So we're going to have to see if Vendramini is going to take that approach, because if he doesn't, he's going to be much smaller than Ziam. Ziam's going to have a reach and height advantage, and Ziam's got really nice striking. So if you think that he can keep Vendramini off of him, it might be a decent underdog bet there, because look at that 55% control time against. Hard to do anything when your opponents are controlling you that much to fight. If we go to the strength of schedule here, once again, we got a situation where there's not much of a sample size. A 2 ratio for Fares Ziam, that's pretty good, but only 1.5 total fights. And then we got a 1.6 ratio for Luigi with 6.5 total fights. A 1 ratio in the wins for Ziam, 0.5 for Vendramini, and Ziam has no ratio in his losses because he faced an opponent that didn't have a loss. So 2.33 ratio because Vendramini's loss was up a weight class at 170 pounds to a really good opponent in Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. So that's where we're at with the stats here. I think you have to have an idea of how much Ziam has been grapple fucked so far in his UFC career to get an idea for why those numbers look like they're so small. But the stats are telling a story here. What are you seeing?
Yeah, like you said, not much of a sample size we got, but I'm really impressed with Luigi Vandermini. The guy, you don't think of him as a striker, but he went out there and knocked out Justin Ari, and that shocked me because I thought that he was going to go out there, take him down, possibly get a submission, but no, he went out there and knocked him out, which, believes me, and I believe that he is making strides in that striking, which I do think is huge. As far as the grappling, this is where it gets a little bit worrisome as far on as the Ziam side. And I know he's getting taken down, controlled a lot, but if Luigi Vandermini is able to get him down, Vandermini is a legit black belt. He's been training BJJ since he was I think 7 or 8 years old. He started really, really young, and you can kind of see it in his fights. Like, he has slick grappling. It just, I don't know about the striking. The striking is something that concerns me. The wrestling concerns me as well. If he's not able to get Ziam down to the mat, I feel like this can be a very, very close fight. And it's line close fight. You have Ziam minus 115, Luigi Vandermini minus 105. I came into it pre-tape thinking I'm probably going to take a shot on Vandermini, but after going over the tape, I kind of have some concerns about the takedowns and the striking. Ziam, you give him the striking advantage, you give the ground advantage to Vandermini, but is he going to be able to get it down there? And I'm not so sure he does or he doesn't. So as far as me, I'm going to be passing on this fight personally. This is more of like a DraftKings fight that I'm going to be interested in playing. I think Vandermini on DK. I haven't looked at the pricing all that much, but I think he might be a dog on there. If he is, I think he has takedown upside and possible submission upside. You said Ziam has been submitted twice, right?
Yes, that's right. He's lost 2/3 of his losses are by submission, so that is definitely a path to victory that we have to respect there. And Vendramini, like you said, legit Brazilian black belt.
I like it. So we have about 50 in here. If you guys can hit the like button if you do enjoy this new show, we'd love to keep doing it week after week. So hit the like button. Let's get those likes up. Trying to get to 100 likes for the first show. That'd be sweet. It really helped me out. Really help out Uncle Weezy as well. So let's hit the chat real quick, then we'll move on. KCOH just going the standard Belal, Jamahal, Deiveson, Style Bender parlay plus 300. I'm personally picking all of them to win, but I'm parlaying Deiveson and Leon Edwards personally. I'm terrified to parlay Hill. Something seems funny. I can't wait to talk about that fight, and I can't wait to hear Uncle Weezy's thoughts on it as well. Thoughts on Chase Hooper for the next fight? Oh, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it soon. Frank, the crank is live. I'd say so. We'll talk about it, though. The like to views ratio is pretty solid today. I saw that. Doing pretty good on the likes. Let's keep it up. Let's keep going. Let's get those numbers up. All right. So next fight here, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this fight, man. We have Chase Hooper going against Steven Peterson. We have Hooper, who is 21 years old. He has 6'1", a 74-inch reach. He's going to have a height and reach advantage coming out of the United States. And as far as Steven Peterson, United States as well. Fortis MMA, great camp, 31 years old, 5'11", 70-inch reach. Last 5 fights, Chase Hooper beat Peter Barrett in one of the weirder fights you'll see. Peter Barrett had a lot of success in those first 2 rounds. Third round was a little bit weird, and he ultimately ended up getting subbed. Or subbing Peter Barrett in that fight, and then lost to Alex Caceres in a fight that he was a pretty big favorite. I think he closed around minus 200, dropped the ball there, and then beat Daniel Tamer. I believe that was his UFC debut. As far as Steven Peterson, his last fight, he knocked out Martin Bravo, which that was a surprise to me because we usually don't see Steven Peterson knocking guys out all that often in the UFC. Knocked him out. I think it was like a spinning back fist, something like that. It was beautiful. Lost to Alex Caceres, lost to Luis Pena. He lost to Matt Bissett, where he beat Matt Bissett, and then he lost to Brandon Davis. So, yeah, very interesting fight here. I kind of want to throw out, before we start that, Steven Peterson is a brown belt in BJJ. He got his brown belt like 7 or 8 years ago. So I don't know what's taken him so long to get that black belt. Maybe it's injuries or whatnot. Chase Hooper just recently got his black belt. But I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the stats because I have a lot of thoughts on this fight myself.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one for sure. Chase Hooper is an interesting fighter, to say the least. The kid's only 21 years old. And, because of that, Peterson's got a big time experience advantage here. We're talking about 289 minutes of total cage time as opposed to 106 for Hooper. And we got a 10-year MMA career for Steven Peterson here, almost going on 11, while Hooper's 3 years and 7 months. But that tells you that Chase Hooper's been fighting professionally since he was 18. So we got Peterson with 6 UFC fights, Hooper with 4. We got almost twice as much cage time in the UFC for Steven Peterson, but Hooper with a 3-1 record and Steven Peterson with a 2-4 record. We'll get to the strength of schedule and see who's beating the better competition here. But average fight time, both fairly high. We know that Chase Hooper is a grappler. He's a submission specialist. But if you actually look at his finish stats, he's finished 3 of his 10 wins have been finished by knockout, and 5 have been finished by sub. So the guy's actually gotten, I think, some ground and pound knockouts. I don't think he's knocking anybody out on the feet. No. But Peterson, 44% of his overall wins by sub, 28% by KO. And then if we see how they lose fights, Chase Hooper never been finished in his 1 loss. And Steven Peterson, 9 losses. He's only been finished once in 9 losses by KO, and it wasn't even in the UFC. So let's go to the striking stats here. Chase Hooper, 4.43 out of 9.75 for a 45.47% striking accuracy. And Peterson, 4.65 out of 13.19 offered. So super high volume from Peterson, but low accuracy with 35.26%. So about 0.26% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed for 0.18 knockdowns per 15 minutes. We see that Hooper has been hit 3.95 times per minute out of 6.41 for a 38% striking defense. 38% striking defense. That is not good. That is not good. He's not going to look young for long if he keeps getting hit in the face at that rate. 5.89 significant strikes landed by Peterson's opponents out of 13.38. So if you look at Peterson's number, he's landing 4.65 and absorbing 5.89. Not a great look. But even though he's absorbing that many, he's still got a way better defense percentage than Hooper, almost 20% better at 56%. We also see that Hooper has been knocked down on a little over 1% of the significant strikes landed against him, 0.63 times per 15 minutes. But I think it's the grappling statistics that are going to tell the story in this one. Chase Hooper, 1 out of 14 on his takedown attempts for 7%, not stellar. We got 0.32 takedowns per 15 minutes and 2.21 sub attempts per 15 minutes. So Hooper definitely grappling a lot. He's controlled his opponents only 14.5% of the time. Maybe that's because he's not getting takedowns, but that's not enough for somebody that grapples as much as Chase Hooper. You'd like to see that control time up around 30 or 40% if you're going to see him win consistently. And then Peterson, 11 of 38 on his takedown attempts for almost 30%, but he's averaging 2.02 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.37 subs per 15 minutes, and he's getting 20% control time. So he's actually controlling his opponents more than Hooper is. He's got a 75% takedown defense. That's good news. 0.55 takedowns per 15 minutes against him. And his opponents have only controlled him 9.34% of the time, Peterson, while he's getting 20%. So Steven Peterson is controlling his opponents twice as much as they're controlling him. In a fight where you don't want to be controlled by somebody like Hooper, that's a good stat. And we look at the ratio, 1 for Hooper, 0.95 for Peterson overall. So a very, very similar level of competition that they've fought. But you see that Hooper's 3-1 and Peterson is 2-4. So that leans Hooper a little bit there. We see that the ratio, not good on their wins. Neither one of these guys is beating opponents that you would call stellar. 0.5 ratio for Chase Hooper in his wins, 0.33 for Steven Peterson. That's not good. And we see that they're both losing to pretty good branded competition. Chase Hooper's lost to Caceres. Steven Peterson losing to Caceres as well. Luis Pena and Brandon Davis. And he's lost one more that I don't have on the page. But, so the strength of schedule doesn't tell us a whole lot because these guys have fought a similar level of competition. What are you thinking so far?
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup, man. This kind of reminds me of the fight we just saw yesterday, and it's going to be the Poilas and the Jordan Levitt fight. I think Hooper, is definitely, on the overrated side. He's very young. I do expect improvements, but I just did not like what I saw in the Peter Barrett fight. I mean, his striking's not there. One thing that stuck out to me was he was 0 for 6 on takedowns against slippery Pete Barrett. And if you're 0 for 6, I don't know if you're going to get down to Steven Peterson here. I mean, Peterson, you talked about it, very good takedown defense. And what I really liked on tape was when Peterson gets taken down, he's really good at getting back up. So I just don't think Hooper has the strength to take him down, hold him down. And if this primarily plays out on the feet, which I'm kind of expecting, I do expect Hooper to play, pull guard, all that, go for legs and stuff like that, which is probably not going to work against Peterson and Brown and Peterson.
Yeah.
But I do expect it to primarily play striking. And at that point, you got to think you favor, Steven Peterson by a decent margin here. So, yeah, I like Steven Peterson quite a bit. We see the line here. Money's coming in Hooper. Looks like the line might indeed flip here, which, I wasn't really expecting that. But then again, I'm not shocked. The hype does drive the line. Another line that I kind of like is the fight goes to decision. It's either, Hooper gets the submission or it probably does go to decision. Hooper has a very good chin on him. He can take a beating, and I'm not sure that Peterson has the power to really knock him out. So I'm looking at the fight goes to decision. I'm looking at Peterson as well. But, yeah, if you like Peterson, I guess wait. I guess, people are maybe getting to the tape, maybe not, and seeing that Hooper, might get this down to the mat, get some takedowns, and maybe sub Peterson. But, yeah, me personally, I'm definitely on the Peterson side this week.
Yeah, he's by far the more experienced mixed martial artist, and and Chase Hooper has a giant hole in his striking game. That's evident to everyone. And to be fair to Chase, he's still young, and when you want to take down your opponents, the last thing you want to do is fight a guy whose nickname is Slippery. That dude is slippery. That guy, he seems like he's died in the cage a couple times and then regained consciousness and kept going. So, but the fact that he actually finished Barrett's pretty good because he was getting the crap kicked out of his calf. He was abused. You said it. He's got a chin on him. That dude can take a punch, and he took several calf kicks there, and he came back and he did the smart thing. His legs were shot. He did an Imanari roll. He got him caught up with the leg locks. They got him in the 50-50 position, and he finished it. So, for a 21-year-old to show that kind of cage IQ, to go right for that submission game, he was over 6 on takedowns, and he said, fuck it, I'm going for the Imanari roll. And he won.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting fight. Very interesting fight. I'm going to have to look more into it, but I'm leaning Peterson here just because he's the more experienced and more well-rounded mixed martial artist.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just don't see him pulling that off. I mean, you could pull it off against Peter Barrett, but by the way, Peter Barrett had been subbed like 2 or 3 times prior to that. And Zalal was out there taking this guy down easily and dominating on the mat. I don't know. I just think Hooper's extremely overrated. The Monkey King, I thought he was overrated. He got beat. I'm hoping that Hooper gets beat here as well. We got a donation in the chat. Tajik Bey, my man, a little appreciation for all the great work you do. Sincerely, the GOAT. I appreciate that, Tajik. I really do appreciate the dono. But yeah. Both shouldn't be in the UFC, probably not. But I do think Hooper has some upside. It's just he needs to work a lot on the striking and a lot on the strength and conditioning. I think strength and conditioning is the biggest one there. Let's see here. Yeah, so we'll move on to this next fight, and we have Camacho versus Frevola, one that I have not taped yet, but it looks like an interesting fight on paper. Camacho, he is 32 years old, which is weird because I could have swore this guy was like 37, 38, but I guess he just turned 32, so he's still somewhat young. He is 5'10", 73-inch reach. Then we have Matt Frevola, who is 30 years old, 5'9", 71-inch reach. And take a look at the last 5 fights for Camacho. This is a big red flag here. Got knocked out by Justin James, who I think is not the best fighter in the world. Lost to Benel Dariush, no shame in that. Beat Nick Hine, and lost to Jeff Neal, and then lost to Drew Dober. So he is 1-4 in his last 5 fights in Camacho. You have Matt Frevola, who lost to Arman Sarukian, Sarukian's a legit prospect. No shame in that whatsoever. He beat Luis Pena in a split decision. He beat Jalen Turner. I got that draw against Lando, and then he lost to Marco Polo Reyes by knockout, which is the biggest red flag in the world. You don't want to be getting knocked out by Marco Polo Reyes. But Uncle Weezy, really curious to see the stats on this one. Yeah,
man. So you mentioned it. You thought Frank Camacho was older, and we could forgive you for thinking that because you check it out. Look at it, 32 years old, but he's had a 15-year and 6-month professional career. I guess when you live in the Northern Mariana Islands, you could be a professional mixed martial artist at the age of 16.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So Frank the Crank, 194 minutes of cage time for him as opposed to 106 for Frevola. The length of the career is almost 2.5 times as long. So he's definitely the more 31 fights to 11, obviously way more experienced. Frevola, though, has almost as many UFC fights as Camacho and a much better record, 3-2-1 as opposed to 2-5 for Camacho. And they've both spent the same amount of time almost in the cage. So we got a 12-minute average fight time about for Frevola and 9 minutes for Camacho. If we look at the finish stats, we see the Camacho definitely a finisher. 86% of his overall wins coming by finish, 50% of them in the UFC by KO. And Frivola, about a 50% finish rate. So not as much of a finisher. But in the UFC, he's finished 83% of his wins. So, yeah, not bad. We're talking about by losses, Frivola has been KO'd and never subbed. And Camacho has been subbed and KO'd. But he's been finishing almost all of his losses at 78%. Camacho with the better accuracy here and the much more volume, 6.67 out of 14.43 strikes. For Frivola, much lower, 2.73 out of 7.23. We see that the striking accuracy for Frivola is low at 37%, as opposed to 46 for Camacho. Half percent takedown, knockdown per total significant strikes landed, 0.22 per 15 minutes. We see that Camacho is just in crazy high volume fights. This is definitely a potential fight of the night here, as his opponents are landing 7.31 strikes against him out of 15.27 significant strikes per minute. So it's clear that Camacho's fights are taking place on the feet, and they are super high volume, and they last until somebody goes down. Frivola, 58% striking defense. He gets hit way more than he hits his opponents. That's a red flag, 2.73. He lands 3.44 per minute landed against him. He's been knocked down on almost 2% of the significant strikes landed against him. So this is a guy that can be knocked down at 0.86 times per 15 minutes. The grappling, Frank Camacho has only attempted 11 takedowns in 7 fights. He's got a 45% accuracy. He's only gotten 9.68% control time, while Frivola 12 out of 32. So you see these averaging over 5 takedown attempts per fight. So Frivola is probably more likely to be the offensive grappler in this one. But the funny thing is that Camacho is a black belt. He has been forever, but he never uses his grappling. He's one of these guys that just prefers to keep it standing, and the grappling is just something he keeps in his back pocket. And we could see only about 17% of Camacho's fights in total take place in control time on the cage or on the mat. So, yeah, we see that these guys got some interesting stats. In terms of the wins or the overall strength of schedule, a 1.68 ratio for Camacho as opposed to 1.29. He's fighting the better competition and the more experienced competition is Camacho. The losses are better for Camacho, and the wins are better for Frivola, as Frivola has a 2.25 ratio in his wins, while Camacho's wins have come against less impressive competition. So, here you give the experience edge to Camacho, you give the finishing edge to Camacho, but Frivola seems to be willing to use his wrestling a little bit more. He's super tough. Both of these guys are. So this is going to be a scrap, man. I can't wait for this one. This is going to be an all-action fight for sure. Frivola, 40% takedown defense. I didn't mention that. That's not great, but Camacho doesn't really try a whole lot of takedowns, so I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to get into the tape on this one. Some things that really stuck out to me is going to be the output of Frank Camacho compared to Frivola's, and also Camacho's takedown defense on paper is 72%. That seems pretty good to me. So if Camacho can keep this on the feet, Frivola hasn't shown to be that much of a knockout threat. So I don't know. It seems like it's a pretty close fight to me, at least on paper. I still got to get into the tape. But yeah, some very, very interesting numbers there for sure, especially considering the line on this one. So we'll take a look at the line. We have Matt Frivola actually minus 200, a pretty sizable favorite, and Camacho plus 170. Is it more of maybe some recency bias because Camacho's looked like crap? Maybe, but I don't know. And then the fight doesn't go to decision, minus 110. Fight goes to decision, minus 130. So I definitely got to look into this one more. But BP in the chat is picking Camacho. I don't know. I think on paper, like this looks like closer than the line indicates.
It's interesting, because nobody tries to take down Frank Camacho, really. He's got 7. He's been taken down 7 times in 7 fights, but that's not a terrible amount, and he's only been controlled 8% of his career. So even the 7 takedowns, he's getting right back up. There's no control time for his opponent. So I think some people might think that the path to victory here for Frivola is wrestling, but something tells me this fight's going to take place on the feet, and if it does, man, it shouldn't be line minus 200 for Frivola. Not with that chin on him.
Yeah, very intriguing fight. I can't wait to dig into it more. So we have a question here. Thoughts on the over 2.5 on Figueiredo and Israel? I think they both hit, but they're probably like very chalky lines there. Leon Edwards, I do like him to win. We'll talk more about that as well. I'm going to prop the Leon via violence. Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, so interesting fight. We'll move on to the next fight here. We have an interesting fight, I guess, and I can't wait to hear your take on this one here. So we have Pannie Kianzad going against Alexis Davis. We have Alexis Davis, who is 36 years old, 5'6", 68-inch reach. And we have Pannie Kianzad, who is 29 years old, 5'7", 66-inch reach as well. So I did tape this one. I looked into it. It's a very interesting fight because we have Pannie, who shows some really good things, but the level of competition between the two is just crazy. We have Alexis Davis, who's been fighting the best of her best throughout her career. Pannie Kianzad, who has been fighting okay competition, but as far as the last 5 fights go, Alexis Davis beat Sabina Mazo, and she was a pretty big dog in that fight as well. I remember she took down Sabina Mazo, was able to lay on her for the majority of the fight, won that. She lost to Viviane Araújo. She lost to Jennifer Maia. She lost to Caitlin Chukagan, and she beat Liz Carmouche. So Alexis Davis is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, but you see it's pretty decent competition. As far as Pannie Kianzad goes, in her last 5, she beat Ciara Eubanks. She beat Betch Correa. She beat Jessica Rose Clark. She lost to Julia Villa, and she lost to Macy Chiasson. So let's hear the stats on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, man, this is a striker versus grappler matchup. So let's focus on the stats that matter here. Let's talk about how well will Davis be able to take down Kianzad, and how is Kianzad going to stop those takedowns? We'll touch on the experience. Obviously, Davis far more experience, but still 30 pro fights, and Kianzad has 19 pro fights. And we see 5 years longer in the game for Davis at 14 years as opposed to 9 for Kianzad. The UFC experience 12 fights to 5, much more cage time for Davis. Davis is a submission specialist. 40% of her wins are by sub, 10% by KO. And we see that Kianzad goes to decision most of the time when she wins, 21% of her wins by knockout. Kianzad has been finished in 40% of her losses have come by sub. And so that we look at that as a potential path to victory for Alexis Davis here. 20% of her losses have come by knockout. Davis has been finished in 40% of her losses, 30% by KO, 10% by sub. Obviously, Kianzad, the far more gifted striker here, 49% striking accuracy to 44 for Davis. She lands more, she throws more. Neither one of these ladies has a knockdown in the UFC, though. That's important. We see a 57% striking defense for Kianzad, 56 for Davis. We see that Davis is actually absorbing more strikes than she deals out, while Kianzad lands 5.14 and only absorbs 3.62, so a pretty good ratio there. But the grappling stats, this is what we got to talk about here. Offensively for takedowns, Alexis Davis, 10 of 24 in her UFC career for almost 42%. That's pretty good. She averages 1 takedown per 15 minutes. She averages almost 1 sub-attempt per 15 minutes. 32% control time, though. That's important. She's controlling her opponents a third of the fight. If she does this to Kianzad, she can easily win a round, and she can maybe win 2. She needs 2 takedowns to win 2 rounds. That's probably the way I'm looking at it. But if you look at Kianzad, 3 out of 18, her opponents have been successful on her taking her down. 83.33% takedown defense. So that's compelling. We see that Kianzad's opponents have only taken her down 0.67 times per 15 minutes. And she has been controlled, though, 30% of her UFC career. That's not a good look, especially when you see Davis has 32% control time. I'm seeing a path to victory here via the takedown, via control time for Alexis Davis. I'm also seeing a path to victory here for Kianzad with that 83% takedown defense. If she can stop Alexis's takedowns, I think it's pretty easy to say that she should piece her up on the feet. If she does get taken down, Alexis Davis, you're not getting her off of you, and you're probably lucky to get to the bell without getting submitted. So let's look at the level of competition. The overall ratio for Kianzad's competition has actually been better than Davis's, 1.6 to 1.17, and she's fighting almost as experienced of opponents as Davis. The wins are better for Kianzad at a 1.5 ratio as opposed to 1, and the losses are better for Kianzad. So the strength of schedule, even though Davis has more experience, is actually telling kind of an interesting tale here for Kianzad. And so as I go through the numbers here and I see that 83% takedown defense, I see that slightly better level of competitions. I see that the last 5 names for Kianzad: Eubanks, Correa, Clark, Avila, Chason. Not an easy fight in there, And the same thing really for Davis. They put, Mazo, Araujo, Maia, Chukagian, Carmouche. I guess it depends on whether you think Alexis Davis can take her down, but I like seeing that 15 of 18 successfully defended takedowns there for Kianzad. So those stats are important, and I think it's kind of telling us that this could be a close fight. It just depends on whether you think Davis can get that control time, get that takedown.
Yeah, to be honest, this feels like a pick on to me, right? I mean, you got the striking of Kianzad. She's going to have the striking advantage. What I don't like seeing is that the bad striking defense of Alexis Davis. She does land 4.18 on average and does absorb 4.18 as well. So Pandy's going to clearly have a striking advantage. It's just the control time that really scares me. And although Pandy, has a good takedown defense, what happens if Davis gets her down just once? She could take her down once and control her for the entire round. So it seems like a pick 'em to me, and I actually did tape this one, and ultimately I will be picking Alexis Davis as a dog. I just don't know if I'm going to bet it yet. The age scares me. The fight IQ BP mentioned in the chat scares me as well. If I want to bet on Alexis Davis, I want to know for sure that she's going to go out there and she's going to attempt, multiple takedowns, not just a couple. I want multiple takedowns because I think it's only going to take one to ride out a round. So taking a look at the odds here, I'm kind of surprised. Pandy Kianzad opened up minus 250, currently minus 220, and Alexis Davis opened up plus 190, currently plus 180. So some money is coming in on Davis, and I kind of agree with that in the line movement here. I think it should be closer to a pick 'em. I don't know if I'm going to take the dog shot yet, but man, I'm kind of tempted. So interesting fight there. But ultimately, I did the tape on it. I will be siding with Davis, but I just like to see her go to those takedowns more.
Yeah, she's smart. She does get them when it seems like when she needs them, she gets them. The question is she going to get them this time? Because if she doesn't, Kianzad's going to have a lot of success on the feet. But that line's wide, man. That line's wide. All it takes is one takedown for Davis to make that fight potentially a split decision if it's close in the striking. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Terrifying fight to bet
on. I'm not betting it, dude. I don't think I'm betting that one.
No, but if I was to bet it, probably would be on that dog shot for sure. I'm not betting minus 220 on money. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, so very, very interesting fight here. We have Movsar Evloev versus Hakeem Dawodu. And Evloev, he is 27 years old, 5'7", 72-inch reach. We have Hakeem, who is 29 years old, 5'8", 73-inch reach as well. So, yeah, Evloev is still undefeated. His last 5 opponents, he had a win against Nick Lentz, beat Mike Grundy, beat Enrique Barzolo, Sungwoo Choi, and Rafael Diaz. And then as far as Hakeem, he has a win over Zybura Tukuov in one of the more boring fights I've ever seen. Julio Arce, Priori, Bokniak, and Arnett. So both guys have won their last 5 fights. Both the guys on some streaks here. Interesting fight as a whole. I do want to shout out the line before we even get started, which is pretty, seems wide at first look. I have not taped this one yet, but I know a lot of people taking the dog shot on Hakeem here. We have Evloev, who is a big favorite, as kind of expected. The guy's undefeated. He has a lot of hype on him. Opened up minus 245, currently minus 250. Hakeem is opened up plus 185, currently plus 210. So I don't know. What do you think about this one, Uncle Weezy?
Man, this is going to be an interesting one because this is another striker versus grappler matchup. If you look at if we just skip to the grappling statistics here for a second, we see that about 87% of Dawodu's fights have taken place in the middle of the octagon, while for Evloev it's about 60%. So Evloev is probably going to try to get this guy down to the ground. He's got 29 takedown attempts in 4 fights. And if you look at Dawodu, his opponents have tried to take him down 27 times in 6 fights. So just immediately right there when I looked at the statistics, this tells me, Evloev is going to be trying to take Dawodu down. And whether he's successful or not is probably going to tell the tale of how this story goes. Pro experience, not much to talk about there. Evloev's slightly more experienced, better record, but they both got 14 fights. Dawodu 6 UFC fights, Evloev 4, very similar in cage time. All of Evloev's fights in the UFC, though, went to the decision. Evloev overall a 50% finish rate. Dawodu 58% finish rate in his wins. For the losses, Dawodu has only lost one fight in his career, and it was by submission. So if he has been submitted before, we do know that Evloev has a chance to do that. If we're looking at the numbers here on the striking, boy, they look a lot alike. 45% striking accuracy for Evloev, 47 for Dawodu, 4.7 strikes landed out of 10.52, 5.15 out of 10.88 for Dawodu. The numbers are very similar there. Dawodu obviously has shown a little more power, but you'd think a dude as yoked as him would have had more than a 0.26% knockdown per significant strikes landed. But the dude definitely has the power advantage over Evloev. If we look at the striking defense here, we see that both of these guys are damn good. 65% striking defense for Evloev, 64% striking defense for Dawodu. They're both getting hit at a significantly less rate than their opponents are hitting them. It's very clear when you look at these striking numbers that there's a good reason why these guys have won their last 10 fights combined. They're winning. But, like I said, we touched on it already. Evloev, 29 takedown attempts in 4 fights. He's going to try to take this guy down over and over again. And Dawodu, in his 6 fights in the UFC, his opponents have tried to take him down 27 times. So they're averaging 4.5 takedown attempts. I don't see why this fight would be any different. I think Evloev's going to try to take this dude down and control him. And let's look at that Hakeem Dawodu takedown defense, man. 23 out of 27 takedowns successfully defended. That's really impressive. He's only been taken down less than 1 time per 15 minutes, despite the fact that his opponents are trying to take him down more than 5 times per fight. So can Hakeem Dawodu keep this fight on the feet? Man, I think he can. Can he piece up Evloev with that 65% striking defense that Evloev has? I don't know. It should, maybe it'll be a closer fight on the feet than we think. But if we go to the level of competition here, we do see that Evloev is fighting the better brand of competition. 1.92 ratio as opposed to 1.09. That's a significant difference. Okay. And then we look at total fights. He's not only fighting the better competition, he's fighting twice as experienced UFC competition with 8.75 total fights for Evloev as compared to 3.83 for Dawodu. The wins, 1.92 ratio, the same because he's only won in the UFC, while only a 1.22 ratio in the wins for Dawodu. Only 4 total fights on his wins too. So not only the overall competition, but Evloev's wins are better than Dawodu's wins. And only 1 loss for Dawodu came early in his UFC career. I think he might have got submitted by Danny Henry, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, 0.5 ratio. So, this is going to be a striker versus grappler. The striker's got damn good takedown defense. The grappler has got great experience, fought better competition, and has got super good striking defense. So something tells me this is going to be a very close fight. Where's the line on this one? You're muted, bro.
My bad. I always forget. I had to cough or something. Okay. Anyway, yeah, this is probably like one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most, and it's on the prelims, which looking forward to quite a bit. What stuck out to me is going to be both guys are not finishers. Both guys are hard to finish. So that kind of leads me towards maybe the fight goes to decision, which is only minus 215. I think that I do not have access to that line, but I think this fight has a really good chance of going to decision. This just seems like one of those really well-matched fights. Both guys, good strikers. You got to give the advantage to Hakeem, but I don't think Evloev's striking is terrible by any means. And then you have Evloev, who is a good grappler, good wrestler, and can get the fight down to the mat. But you have that takedown defense of Hakeem. So on paper, it seems like a really well-matched fight. I do need to look into it more. But the line, first look, the line does look a little bit off to me. Minus 250 for Evloev, plus 210 for Hakeem. I think that line's more because of Evloev's undefeated. There's some hype on him. But, on paper, first look, this fight seems like it should be closer lined.
Yeah, and can Evloev win a striking battle here? Because what happens if he doesn't get this fight to the ground?
It'll be close, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be really close. And then not only that, you just mentioned it, and this is important. Evloev and Dawodu, neither one of these guys have finished a win in the UFC. So if you're looking at that, if you're looking at that fight goes to decision prop, I do see potentially, because Dawodu has been submitted in the past and he's fighting, a really slick guy in Evloev, maybe if Evloev does get him down, there's a path to victory for submission there. But Dawodu's got 85% takedown defense. So maybe that fight goes to decision. 15-minute average fight time for Evloev, 12.47 for Dawodu. That's not a bad look.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, definitely looking forward to this fight here. We have about 65 in the chat. If you guys can hit the like button. Honestly, pretty good turnout. When you say Uncle Weezy for the first show.
Yeah. I mean, we just found out that we're doing this show a couple days ago, man. This is fantastic. I'm happy there's so thanks to everybody that's here sharing this time with us. We're degenerates. We need our mixed martial arts content, and the earlier in the week we get it, the less chance we start scratching and start jonesing. So.
Yeah, like I was saying, man, like this is big. This is something just to get our feet wet. I think it's great to really take a in-depth, and I said balls deep earlier in the video, and as you guys can see, we are going balls deep into this, which I think is huge. I think it's something new, something that nobody else is doing, and also on a Sunday, get your Sunday content out there. So we'll get to the next fight here. Very interesting fight here. We have Joanne Calderwood going against Lauren Murphy. We have Calderwood, who is 35 years old, 5'6", 65-inch reach, going against Murphy, who is 37 years old, 5'5", 67-inch reach as far as the last five. For Murphy, she beat Aaliyah Shakarova, which was a fight that she got a submission in. I believe that was her first submission in her career, if I'm not mistaken. She beat Roxanne Modafferi by decision. She beat Andrea Lee. She beat Mara Morella, and she lost to Ciara Eubanks. As far as Calderwood, she beat Jessica Ai in a phenomenal performance. She lost to Jennifer Maia in a fight that I really thought she was going to win. I think I had a bet on her in that fight, and she got it's like an armbar from guard, of course.
It's happened before too, bro.
And then Andrea Lee, she beat Lee. She lost to Jakagan, and then she beat Lipsky. So what are the stats for this one, Weezy?
Yeah, we got, you look at the experience numbers, and my God, they're almost identical. 18 pro fights for Murphy, 20 for Calderwood, 14-4 for Murphy, 15-5 for Calderwood. Less than 10 minutes, a little more than 10 minutes to separate the cage time. And they're both 10 years and 11 months into their career. I think it looks like Joanne Calderwood started her pro career 4 days before Lauren Murphy. So these are clearly two very experienced flyweights here. 12 fights in the UFC for Calderwood, 10 for Murphy. We see overall 40% finish rate for Calderwood, overall a 64% finish rate for Murphy. Murphy has finished 50% of her UFC wins, which is, I'm telling you, that's impressive. You don't see a lot of flyweight women's fights they're not, 50% of women's flyweights fights don't end in a finish. So Lauren Murphy is a finisher for this division, and she's doing it in the UFC. So let's look here, striking stats. We look at Calderwood here, and we see a nice little advantage. 3.8 out of 9.87 for Murphy, while 6.59 out of 13.2 for Calderwood. So we see a serious volume advantage and almost 11% striking accuracy advantage here for Calderwood. Even a power advantage is Calderwood is averaging 0.34 knockdowns per 15 minutes, while Murphy is averaging 0.11 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Neither of these ladies has ever been knocked down in the UFC. We got Murphy absorbing just slightly more strikes than she's dishing out, while Joanne Calderwood has a really nice striking ratio here at 6.59 landed and only 4.4 absorbed. So while Calderwood is the more accurate striker, Murphy's actually better defensively at 63% striking defense as opposed to 53% striking defense from Calderwood. Grappling, we see that both of these ladies will go to the grappling. They both have 29 takedown attempts in the UFC. They both average over a takedown per 15 minutes. They both average over 20% offensive control time. We see that Calderwood's takedown percentage is about 18% better than Murphy, so she's done a little bit better job getting the fight to the mat. Murphy, though, better takedown defense at 71% as opposed to 58% for Calderwood. They've both been taken down about the same amount of times per 15 minutes, and they've both been controlled about the same time. If we look at the strength of schedule stats, we see a 0.94 ratio for Murphy and a 1.14 ratio for Calderwood, so a slight edge there for Calderwood. We see that the wins are not particularly impressive on either of them, with a 0.77 and a 0.83 ratio. Calderwood's opponents may be a little more experienced. And then we'll look at the losses. Calderwood is losing to better competition. So if I'm looking at the strength of schedule, I give Calderwood the slight edge there. Calderwood is the more accurate striker. Murphy's the better defensive striker. Calderwood a little more accurate with her takedowns. Murphy a little bit better with her takedown defense. Boy, you want to talk about some stats that are really close. I don't see much here, man. If this line is more than minus 150 either way, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, it's an intriguing fight. Honestly, I was tempted on the Calderwood side. Got done with tape and all that, and I think the best move here is just to pass for multiple reasons. I do like Calderwood striking. I do think she has the striking advantage. I just have concerns about what happens if Murphy takes down Calderwood, lays on her for a round. I feel like it could be a really close fight. And it's hard to trust Calderwood. It's hard to trust her, especially after that Maia submission. What are you doing? That one hurt. But, just in general, you can't trust her. Sometimes she shows up, sometimes she doesn't. Is she going to show up this fight? We don't know. So we'll take a look at the odds here. And we have Joanne Calderwood, who is a little bit of a favorite, opened up minus 115, curling minus 145. So some money's actually really pouring in on her. Murphy opened up minus 115, plus 125 now. Fight goes to decisions, probably juiced to the max, which is minus 305, which, probably does finish more than likely. I don't know. I'm going to probably pass here. I was tempted on Calderwood, but especially with the lines moving now, I'm just going to sit back and watch this one. Or even somebody said it could possibly be like a toilet break, maybe go make some dinner, maybe go, make a phone call, have a cigarette, have a drink. But I don't know, man. Screw this fight, to be honest. But
I'm not betting on it either, dude. Yeah.
But I'll pick Calderwood. I think that's going to be a pick I stay with throughout the week as well. Already did the tape and all that. I think I'll just pass here.
Yeah. I'll pick Calderwood too, but this is really close on paper. And Lauren Murphy, they call her lucky for a reason. She's had some decisions go her way. So if this does go to decision, that's one of the things. That's when you got to remember. It's like, and now you got to trust the judges.
Yeah.
Why put the money on it, man? I don't know.
Exactly.
It seems like a hard pass.
Maybe there's a prop that sticks out or something later in the week, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be passing here for the most part. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Very, very, very intrigued at this next fight because we already saw this fight. We saw this fight a couple months ago. Eryk Anders going against Darren Stewart. We have Anders, who is 34 years old, 6'1", 75-inch reach. We have Darren Stewart, the younger fighter, 30 years old, 6 foot, 74-inch reach. So the interesting thing about this fight was their last fight was at 185 pounds. This is at 205. So that's interesting to me. But I was very, very tempted in playing Eryk Anders on FanDuel. I believe he's minus 138. I thought it was going to for sure play that. I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about it. I mean, we're not going to see one person pick Darren Stewart this week. We already saw the fight. The move up in weight scares me. And Eryk Anders in general just scares me. It's hard to trust the guy. That's probably why he was the dog in the first fight. But I can't wait to get into the numbers here, and I can't wait to get into your thoughts. But overall, I feel like this line could be a trap.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the one thing I've noticed is, when you see these rematches, a lot of people seem to think that they're going to play out the same way they did the first time, and it almost never happens that way, man. I mean, I can only Max Holloway, Volkanovski was like a fight that was almost identical the second time as it was the first. One of the ones I remember a while back, Tim Means just beat the brakes off of Alex Oliveira. And then there was an illegal knee or an eye poke or something like that, and it wound up being a no contest. And then they fought again a month later, and Means was a huge favorite because he had just absolutely tore him up. And then Oliveira came out there and beat him. So you just don't know. Like you say, this one could be a trap, man. And I was on Stewart in this fight, so I got bailed out massively by that illegal knee by Anders because he was absolutely shaving his ass. And I didn't see it coming, man. I did not see that one coming because Anders has been all over the place. He's super inconsistent. And he is not the kind of guy I'm ever betting on as a favorite because the variance in his performances are something that you really need to keep an eye out for. I mean, he made Khalil Roundtree look like the best light heavyweight that ever stepped face on the planet. That fight was such an ass shaving. I had so much respect for Anders that he took a beating in that fight and he would not go down. And then you see him, and he'll come out and he'll look like an absolute beast like he did against Stewart. So the pro experience number is very much the same. Darren, both these guys pretty young in their mixed martial arts career. 6 years for Stewart, almost 7, almost 6 years for Anders. In terms of the UFC experience, Anders a little more experience in terms of cage time, one more fight for Stewart. Both got almost identical records. Both of these guys are knockout artists, not really getting wins by sub. Darren Stewart, when you do beat him, you usually beat him by sub. When Anders does lose, it's by TKO, but that's only 1 out of his 5 losses have been by knockout. Both of these guys are ridiculously tough. If we go to the striking numbers, 46% accuracy for Anders, 44 for Stewart, very close there. 3.23 out of 6.95 for Anders, 3.09 out of 6.97. Not a whole lot of difference there. Anders showing the more power, though, with over 1% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, as opposed to about 0.6% for Stewart. So he gets almost twice or a little more than twice as many knockdowns per 15 minutes than Stewart does. Defensively, very similar numbers as well. Anders, though, does absorb more strikes than he deals out. He lands 3.23, absorbs 4.15, kind of a red flag there. He also gets knocked down a little more than Stewart does. But the striking defense at 50 and 51%, not great on either side. And then we got, 1.62 takedowns per 15 minutes for Anders and 1.5 for Stewart. So 42 takedown attempts in 11 fights for Anders. So he is busy with the wrestling. Stewart, 27 takedowns in 12 fights. So not quite as busy. 40% takedown accuracy for Stewart, 35 for Anders. Both about the same in takedowns per 15 minutes. We got a 21% control time for Anders, 16% for Stewart. 80% takedown defense for Anders. He's definitely hard to take down. 65% for Stewart. But if you look at Stewart, my God, people are scared of his striking. And you can always tell how many times their opponents try to take them down. 75 takedown attempts Darren Stewart's opponents have had in only 12 fights. Dude, that's over 7 takedowns. Or I'm sorry, wait, my math. Yeah, my statistics degree is not good. Over 6 takedowns attempts per fight against Stewart, and he's guarding almost 2/3 of them. So Stewart is being taken down 3.54 times per 15 minutes, and he's been controlled 32.29%. So that's what we saw in the first fight, didn't we? We saw Anders very aggressive with the wrestling. Showed a great pace, and he definitely used the wrestling. He went to it early and often, which is the best way to beat Darren Stewart, and he showed some really good cage IQ for the first time in a while. If we look at the strength of schedule stats, very similar here. 1.28 ratio for Anders, 1.31 for Stewart. Anders fighting the more experienced competition. The ratio in the wins, very similar. Anders fighting, again, the more experienced competition. And in the losses, Stewart's losses maybe a little bit better, but Anders losing to the more experienced competition. So I see a path to victory for Anders doing the exact same thing that he did last time, but, these fights set up as a trap, and the variance in Eryk Anders' cage performance is way too high for me to bet him as a favorite.
Yeah, I think it could be one of those fights where, we're all going to pick Anders. I mean, we saw the fight. A lot of people are going to be betting Anders. I think that it's going to be one of the more, bet fighters on the week, but this could very well be a trap, especially considering the line. Like this line, I don't know, it seems too good to be true. Anders is only -145, Stewart's +125. Anders looked like -300 favorite in that fight. So to see this line this close, it is concerning. And I went back and watched that fight. It was actually somewhat competitive for the first minute and a half, 2 minutes. But once Anders did hurt Stewart, that's when the tide changed. So I was kind of thinking, what happens if Anders does not hurt Stewart? So I don't know. I feel like it's a really close fight. I'm going to pick Anders to, grind up Stewart against the cage, possibly take him down. But I don't know. Anything can happen in this fight. I don't know. I think an interesting look at this fight could be the fight goes the distance. Both guys are very tough. You said both guys have never been knocked out. Am I correct?
Losses by knockout. Only Eryk Anders has been knocked out once, but Stewart has never been knocked down. I mean, you're talking about 40 professional fights between the two of them. So
I'm trying
these guys are seriously tough.
I'm trying to think of who knocked out Anders. It's on the tip of my tongue.
I've got the advanced stats right here. I will get that for you right now.
Okay, so Anders was. Let's see who gets to it first, Uncle Weezy. Anders. Yeah,
I'm rolling through 1,100 rows of data here.
Yeah, Thiago Santos. He's not going to. So no shame in that, So
no shame.
I was kind of thinking. I know everybody thinks this fight's going to finish because of how the first one played out, but regardless, both guys are tough. Both guys have chins. Fight goes to decision, sitting at plus money, plus 145. I'm assuming the under or the over 2.5 is going to be, I don't know, plus money as well. So I might take a look at the over, but I kind of just want to completely stay off this fight as a whole. I feel like it's a trap. I don't feel good about it. I'll pick Anders. I'm sticking with Anders, but a little iffy about it.
Yeah, I'm picking Anders too, but like I say, the variance in his performance is just too wide for me to ever feel safe betting him as a feel safe betting him, period.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know which one's going to show up.
Yeah. Robert Cherry says Anders over 2.5. I'm kind of leaning the over as well. Stewart said he had a terrible weight cut last time out, had a migraine all week because of it. Yeah, see, stuff like that. Like that. This could be a completely different fight. And then we're adding on top of it, we're at a new weight class. Yeah, I'm passing, man.
I didn't even know this one was at 205. You kind of surprised me with that one. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't know it too until Clint from the Dire MMA podcast pointed it out to me, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely not betting it now.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see. All right, so this is going to be, I believe it's the last fight on the prelims. We have Drew Dober going against Brad Riddell, a fight that on paper I'm really looking forward to. I'm not able to tape this one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So Drew Dober, 32 years old, 5'8", 70-inch reach. We have Brad Riddell, 29 years old, 5'7", 71-inch reach. It seems like there's a lot of hype on Brad Riddell coming out of City Kickboxing. He's on the same card of Israel Adesanya. A lot of people really do like this guy. I think he's very talented, and as do I. And we'll take a look at the last 5 fights. We have Drew Dober lost to Islam Makhachev. No shame in that. He beat Alexander Hernandez, knocked him out, knocked out Nasrat, knocked out Marco Polo Reyes, and then he lost to Benil Dariush. So, just right there, losing to Islam by sub, losing to Dariush by sub. Those aren't terrible losses. And then we have Brad Riddell. He beat Alex da Silva. He beat Magomed Mustafayev. He beat Jamie Malarkey. And those are pretty much his notable wins there. So what are we looking at here for the stats, Uncle Weezy?
Striker versus striker. For once, we get to see these guys fight another striker, because Brad, look at the takedown attempts against these guys, dude. Brad Riddell only has three UFC fights, and his opponents have attempted 35 takedowns.
That's insane.
And then Dober, the same thing, 16 fights, 36 takedowns, but they're taking him down, and this is, I can't wait for this fight, If we talk experience here, Dober has got it in spades. However, Riddell, a seriously credentialed kickboxer or Muay Thai art, I'm not sure, but he had a professional career prior to mixed martial arts where he was, he's the striking coach over at City Kickboxing. Yeah. So, Dober, 11 years, almost 12 in his career, and Brad Riddell about 8. But we see that the major experience advantage goes to Dober in both overall and in the UFC. 16 UFC fights for Dober, only 3 for Riddell. 43% knockout rate overall for Dober, 26% sub rate, and Riddell 56% knockout rate in his wins. When Brad Riddell has lost fights, and there's only been one, he was subbed. Drew Dober loses the same way. He loses 40% of his wins or losses come by sub, only 10% by knockout. So both of these guys' weakness is their grappling, but you don't see. Well, actually, Drew Dober has 39 takedown attempts in his UFC career. That kind of surprises me.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yep.
That really surprises me. I'm going to have to go look back at my data entry and make sure I didn't fuck that one up. It doesn't sound right? 39 takedown attempts for Drew Dober. He's gotten 7 of them. That sounds about right. Yeah. But if we look at the striking statistics, we only got 3 fights for Riddell, so it's hard to tell. But, 4.23 landed out of 10.45 for Dober. It's a lot of volume. 4.36 out of 8.69 for Riddell. 40% accuracy for Dober, 50% accuracy for Riddell. Both these guys showing some power, almost 1% knockdown per total significant strikes for Dober, about 0.5% for Riddell, 0.56 knockdowns per 15 minutes as opposed to 0.33. The defensive numbers are pretty impressive. They both are getting hit less than they hit their opponents, but Riddell lands at 4.36 per minute and only absorbs 2.62 per minute. So definitely a very good ratio there. So Riddell might be the slightly better defensive striker. The grappling stats, 39 takedown attempts for Dober, evidently. I don't know how that happened, but we'll just say it did. And then 17.95% accuracy, 37 for Riddell. Control time, they're both controlled more than they control their opponents. Drew Dober by only 5%, but Brad Riddell, 20% gap there. While he controls his opponents 14%, he's being controlled 34%. But I still think that this will take place in the middle of the cage. Drew Dober, a 1.15 ratio as opposed to 1.67 for Riddell, but that we got to keep that we got to view that through the lens that Drew Dober has 8.75 average fights for his opponents as only 2.67 for Riddell. So even though the ratio is impressive for Riddell, Dober is by far fighting a more experienced competition. And we see the wins are more impressive ratio-wise for Riddell, but the same thing, less experienced. And then the losses, 1.38 ratio for Drew Dober with 10.33 total fights. Those last two losses are top fivers in Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush. So, Drew Dober seems to, even though the ratio is not looking great, he's fought the more experienced competition. I hope that this is a striking battle, because if it is, it's a potential fight of the night.
Yeah.
However, I don't think I'm going to be betting it, because I would have to look at the tape and see if I see anything there. But if this is a striking match, I think the fans are going to be really happy, because they're going to see two really great strikers just throw down in the middle of the cage, and it'll be all action.
Yeah, this is one that I definitely still got a tape. And by the way, Drew Dober has indeed attempted 39. He attempted 14 against Scott Holtzman like 5-6 years ago. Was able to get 5 of them. So that's what I kind of have question marks about. And I do need to get into the tape for this, because I was thinking, man, both are great strikers. Okay,
Yeah.
Both guys, can be taken down, have been taken down. I was thinking, what happens if one of these guys, tries to take the other guy down? I think if they did that, there could be some success there. So I don't know. I definitely got to get into the tape on that one, but I think that's an interesting aspect of, maybe one of these guys, trying to take the other guy down. So I think that's very interesting there. But yeah, you're right. This is going to be a fun fight as long as it's on the feed. Hopefully it's on the feed, which it should be for the most part. You remember the Jamie Malarkey fight with Brad Riddell. That was one of the best fights I've ever seen. That fight was an absolute war. So I kind of see something like that, man. Good fight. Not going to throw out a pick there yet. On paper, it does look very close. I got to tape it, but it should be a fun fight nonetheless. And we'll take a look at the odds here, and we have Brad Riddell is an underdog, plus 115, opened up minus 105. Drew Dober opened up minus 125, currently minus 135. So a little bit of love looks to be coming in on Dober. But yeah, regardless, it's a great fight. It's a fight I'm looking forward to. It is the prelim headliner, I do believe, as well.
Yeah, and that line seems correct to me, because I'm not seeing a lot in the stats here that would lead me to believe that either one of these guys is a huge advantage. So yeah, that looks good to me.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we'll get to the next fight here, which this is going to open up the main card, and a fight that I'm really looking forward to. Paul Craig, which I'm a pretty big Paul Craig guy. I think I'm the one of the only few Paul Craig fans out there, and he's going against Jamahal Hill, a prospect that people really, really do love. And you can tell by the betting line that people really love this guy, and we'll get to the betting line a little bit later, but he's a big favorite. We have Paul Craig, who is 33 years old. He is 6'3", 76-inch reach. We have Jamahal Hill, who is 30 years old, 6'4", 79-inch reach. So Jamahal Hill, a little bit bigger guy, can have a reach as well. We'll take a look at the last 5. Paul Craig beat Shogun, absolutely dominated him. He submitted Antagulov. There was that draw against Shogun as well in a fight that I thought Paul Craig did enough to get it done. It was a close fight, though. And then he submitted the worst fighter in UFC history in Vincent Moreira. And then he got knocked out by Alonzo Menefield. As far as Jamahal Hill, he beat Open St. Preux. He beat Klitzen and Breo. They turned it to a no contest. I believe he popped before that marijuana. Yeah, and then he beat Darko Stosic. So, interesting fight to me. I'm curious to get into the stats. It seems like everybody's throwing Jamahal Hill into their parlays. I was going to do that, but after I got into the tape, I looked into the stats, I decided to pass. I'm still picking Jamahal Hill, but I feel like this fight, it could get iffy potentially, but let's dig into the stats here, Uncle Weezy.
Yeah, let's do it. And I think we might be able to find an alternate angle for the people that are on Hill here when we do look into the numbers here. But I'm also a big Paul Craig fan. I like this dude. He's fought a lot of tough guys in the UFC. 19 pro fights, but 11 of them in the UFC. He's got a little more experience than Jamahal. He's been doing this almost twice as long as Jamahal. We're talking about 92 minutes of cage time in the UFC as opposed to 35 for Jamahal. 6-4 record for Craig, 3-0 with 1 no contest. But let's just call that 4-0. You can't lose a fight. I mean, if you're whooping your ass, your opponent's ass, and you're high on weed, that says more about your opponent. Why are they taking you a win away from you? So yeah. Very impressive, dude. Hill's looked great, but here's the thing that I'm looking at. We want to look at, maybe we can talk you out of the Jamahal Hill pick by just saying, all right, Paul Craig, overall, 86% finish rate by sub, 14% finish rate by KO. 100% of his wins have finished inside the distance. Let's look at Paul Craig's losses. 25% by sub, 75% by KO. Guess what? 100% of his losses come inside the distance. What does that tell us? Paul Craig hasn't seen a bell in the UFC. Not yet. So somebody's going to get served. Somebody's going out in this one probably. But let's look at these striking numbers because they seriously tell a tale over here. 2.4 significant strikes landed, 4.88 for Craig, while it's 7.9 per minute landed out of 15 for Jamahal Hill. Slightly more accurate, slightly more powerful is Hill, 0.86 knockdowns per 15 minutes as opposed to 0.16 for Craig. Huge striking advantage in this fight, obviously, for Jamahal Hill. The guy's got amazing hands. On the defensive side, we see both of them have a 49% striking defense. Paul Craig has been knocked down 0.32 times for 15 minutes. Kind of a bad recipe when you're fighting a great striker like Hill. But we got to get into the grappling stats because this is clearly a striker versus grappler fight. Jamahal Hill's got the edge in the striking. But look at Paul Craig's fights. The grappling stats show us that he has 23% control time in the UFC, but he's yielded 38% control time. So that means that over 62% of his fights have been taking place on the cage or on the ground. That's not going to be a good recipe for Jamahal Hill if he can't keep the fight in the center of the cage. And here's another thing. We've been talking about these strikers and these striker versus grappler matchups, right, Brady? Where we were saying like, oh my God, look at how many takedown attempts Brad Riddell is facing per fight. How can he get his striking going like that? Now we look at Hill, who's a pure striker, but in his 4 UFC fights, he's only faced 13 takedown attempts. So just a little over 3 per fight. And he has been taken down 2.58 times per 15 minutes. So even though Jamahal Hill has only been controlled 6.63% of his UFC career, he has been shown that he can be taken down, but he's hard to control once you do take him down. You're going to have to figure out, do you think Craig can get this fight to the ground? He's not a bad striker, but if this thing stays striking for 15 minutes, I'd be shocked if Paul Craig got a win because Hill is just, he's a very, very well-credentialed striker here. So the big differences I'm seeing here is that a lot of Craig's fights take place in control time, while Hill, less than 8% of his fights take place in control time. That means 92% in the center of the cage for Hill's fights. I have a feeling with Craig being the veteran here, having twice as many fights, that he's going to be smart and take this fight to where Hill isn't going to be comfortable, either against the cage or on the ground. If we look at the strength of schedule, a 1.22 ratio as opposed to 1.15 for Hill, 8.27 total fights as opposed to 7. The wins are pretty similar, 1.37 ratio for Craig, 1.27. Hill fighting the slightly more experienced competition. And then in the losses, Jamahal Hill does not have a loss, and Craig a 1.08 ratio. So, this is a classic striker versus grappler. It depends on whether you think Paul Craig can get this fight to the ground, but he's attempted 50 takedowns in 11 fights. So I get the feeling that Hill is going to see more grappling in this fight than he's been used to seeing, and it might make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, so this is a very, very interesting one for sure. It scares me. It scares me. Like I said, I was getting really close to parlaying Hill after I dig into the tape and the stats, all that. I just couldn't do it. Against Darko Stosic, Stosic took him down 6 times, attempted 13, and yes, he was able to get back up. But I just think, like, what happens if Paul Craig takes him down? You know, what happens if Craig is able to get this down to the mat? I don't know. You know, Paul's a crazy guy to be on top of you, and I don't know. And then after that, he fought Klidson and Brea, who you thought that, hey, maybe Klidson's going to come out here and try to take him down. He knocked him out within 2 minutes there. 0 takedown attempts for Klidson there. So we didn't get to see any potential improvements in the takedown defense of Hill. And then against Ovin St. Brew, 0 takedown attempts as well. So, you know, you're going to want to take this guy down. People just aren't trying to do so outside of Darko Stosic. And when he has faced takedowns, he has been getting taken down. So with that said, although Paul Craig does attempt a lot of takedowns, I believe you said like 50. Yes, he's a ton. He's only gotten 13. I don't think his wrestling's all that great. Hill should be able to stuff the takedowns, but what happens if Craig does get it down to the mat? And that's just why I don't feel comfortable with the minus 280 on Jamahal Hill, open at minus 300, and Craig's plus 240. Paul Craig getting disrespected as usual. I'm picking Jamahal Hill. I'm picking Jamahal Hill by first round knockout. But what happens if Craig gets his fight down to the mat? Darko Stosic was able to. He wasn't able to do anything with it. But I have a feeling if Craig gets down to the mat, it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, dude. I would not bet Jamahal Hill at this line. Like I say, that fight doesn't go to decision should be a fantastic bet. Nigel Lee just called it there. I mean, like you're talking about, you know, every single one of Craig's fights in the UFC has ended inside the distance. So that's a good thing to lay on there. But, you know, one thing I wanted to bring up about Hill is, like you just mentioned, St. Preux and Bray weren't even trying takedowns. Weird. And that's, you know, that's bad fight IQ on their part. And Paul Craig is not going to just let him be like, okay, let's see if I can get this kid another win and just stay in the fucking middle of the ring and get my face boxed off. He's not going to do that. He's going to try to take him down. Craig has attempted 50 takedowns in 11 fights. So, yeah, he's going to make Jamahal Hill grapple. And because of that, you know, there's no way I can lay. We haven't really seen him. We haven't really seen Jamahal Hill get taken down and controlled yet. And it's because of the competition that he's facing. You know, they're not even trying to, with the exception of Stosic, and Stosic is very one-dimensional. So, yeah, this is a great fight. Doesn't go to decision bet. And if you're a Paul Craig fan like Brady and I are, you might want to take a small sprinkle on that underdog bet. He's a veteran.
I could never bet Paul Craig ever, to be honest. But I'll root for him every time. I can't bet him ever. But
yeah, I'm rooting for him. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, man.
The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 335, which is the widest line on the card. I'm assuming they're going to set the under at 1.5, and I'm assuming it's going to be probably around minus 110, minus 120. I think the under 1.5 is a pretty good look. It's either, you know, Jamahal Hill knocks him out or Craig gets him down, possibly submits him. I'm going to pick the Jamahal Hill knockout by the first round, but do I want to lay minus 300? Honestly, I just do not. So I'm going to be looking at the violence here. Maybe if it's a good line on the Jamahal Hill by knockout prop, could be taking that. Paul Craig submission prop, could be looking at that. I don't know, but it's going to be a pass for me as far as the money line goes. I just think it's too wide. I get there's hype on Hill. I get that people think Paul sucks, but what happens if this fight gets down to the mat? I don't know, and I don't want to find out if I'm laying minus 300 on it. So going to pass there, but I think there's better ways to bet the fight. So Demian Maia versus Belal Muhammad, the second fight on the pay-per-view of Demian Maia, who is, my goodness, the dude is 43 years old. On his way to 44. He's 6'1", 72-inch reach. Belal Muhammad, 32 years old, 5'11", 72-inch reach. We'll take a look at the last 5 opponents. Maia lost and got knocked out by Gilbert Burns, which that did surprise me there. He beat Ben Askren by submission. I was high on him there. He beat Anthony Rocco Martin, beat Lyman Good, and lost to Kamaru Usman. No shame in that. As far as Belal Muhammad, the no contest with Leon Edwards, I believe it was a eye poke. We've been seeing a lot of those eye pokes as of late. He beat Diego Lima, he beat Lyman Good, he beat Takashi Sato, and he beat Curtis Millender. Honestly, those wins just don't look like the best wins to me. But Maia's like 45 years old, just about 44 years old. So I don't know. Interesting fight. I have not taped this one yet because I don't really see myself betting on it. I see a lot of people on it below. It's like a parlay piece. So what are the stats on this one, Uncle Weezy?
Yeah, we got a very experienced old mixed martial artist in Demian Maia. 38 pro fights, 411 minutes of cage time. 19 year, 8-month career, world Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion. We got, Muhammad 13 UFC fights as opposed to 32 for Maia. So, I mean, this guy's literally fought everyone. 394 minutes in the UFC cage. I mean, maybe Frankie Edgar's higher than that. There's probably not a whole lot of fighters that have spent that much time in the cage. Maia is obviously a submission artist. 50% of his wins by sub. Belal, not much of a finisher, man. 28% overall finish rate for Belal Muhammad in 22 fights. So, yeah, man, he's probably only finished 5 fights if my math is correct. And both these guys are tough. Maia, only 20% of his losses overall come by KO. 33% of Belal Muhammad's 3 losses, so he's only lost once by KO. The striking statistics here, both at 43%. Demian Maia only lands 1.82. He probably doesn't need to land any, and he still would have won the same amount of fights. He's never won a fight with his striking. Muhammad 4.75 that he lands out of 11.02. The striking statistics, they just don't matter because this fight isn't going to be a striking match. It's going to be how well Belal guards the takedowns of Demian and whether he can keep the fight standing. But there's if you are on the Muhammad side, this is very important. Okay, if we look at the grappling stats, which is going to be the most important stats for this fight, Demian Maia, ridiculous 38.27 control time over 32 fights. I mean, that's crazy. 67 out of 253 takedown attempts. Crazy. 253 takedown attempts in 32 fights, man. That's like at least 7, 8. It's more like 8 takedown attempts per fight. So, he's got 38% control time, and he's only been controlled 12%. For Muhammad, you only got 14 takedown attempts against him in 13 fights. So he's going to see a lot more takedown attempts from Demian Maia here. But Belal Muhammad has an 85.71% takedown defense. You got to love to see that against Demian Maia. That's the first thing you want to look at. Can this guy stuff takedowns? He's not stuffing a ton of takedowns per fight, but he is stuffing them. Last 5 fights, though, Leon Edwards, Lima, Good, Sato, Millender, not exactly takedown specialists. So, but he's only been controlled 2.83% of the time. So, to see an 85% takedown defense and to see only less than 3% control time against, very good if you're on the Muhammad side. Demian Maia, 1.72 ratio as opposed to 2 for Muhammad, but Maia has been fighting the more experienced competition. They both have a 1.6 ratio on their wins. Maia, once again, fighting the more experienced competition. And Belal Muhammad's losses have been a little bit better than Demian Maia's losses at 2.4 ratio as opposed to 1.98. Striker versus grappler. Muhammad is actually a bit of a grappler, but there's no reason for him to grapple in this fight. That is. So, I mean, he's 22 of 78 on takedowns, but who gives a shit? He's not going to try one. Or if he does, it would be not smart. So, yeah, dude, this is an old man who needs to get Belal Muhammad down at least once in order to have any chance at all of even seeing the bell. Otherwise, he'll get knocked out. So, do you think Demian Maia's got one more good takedown and some control time in him? Because he could get a submission against Belal. Belal has never been submitted in his career. So, a lot of things line up good for Belal here. 11 years younger, a very experienced mixed martial artist, good takedown defense, very little control time against. He has all the statistics that you would want from a guy who's fighting a fighter like Demian Maia.
Yeah, it's definitely an intriguing fight. I mean, the age, it just pops off the page to me. 43 years old, about to be 44. It just, it'd be crazy if he was able to pull this off. And like you mentioned, it went through all the stats and that. He needs to get this fight down to the mat. Does he do it? I'm leaning towards no. I think Muhammad has a very good takedown defense, very strong hips. I think he can stuff those takedowns. And at range, it's Muhammad all day. So I kind of see Muhammad stuffing the takedowns, keeping it at range, and just piecing apart Maia for 3 rounds. Don't think Muhammad finishes him or anything like that. Maybe take a look at the Muhammad by decision if it's a decent price. But as far as the money line goes, minus 225 for Belal. He actually opened up minus 270, so there is some love coming in on the Demian Maia side. Maia opened up plus 210, currently plus 185. So some people are taking a shot on Demian Maia here, it looks like.
Yeah, and you know, you could see why. You know, you don't even have to do any tape study to be like, oh, Demian Maia. You could just say to yourself, all he needs is one takedown and this fight could be over. So when you're getting plus 275 or something like that, it might just be a lot of, you know, old school mixed martial arts fans who are like, hey, man, I don't care if he's 53. This dude takes you down, man. You're in a whole heap of trouble. But like I say, when we look at the numbers, it's to get an idea. You know, that's what's a great thing about a show like this, you know, to know that Belal Muhammad has 85% takedown defense and only 3% control time against exactly the kind of stats that you want to see. If you were already thinking about betting Muhammad, that's got to make you feel real good about maybe placing that ticket. But, you know, if you're on the Maia side, you don't have to explain to anybody why you're taking that side. You're thinking he gets a submission.
Yep. Submission. Maybe he takes him down a couple times around. I don't know.
But that could be too. Yeah, he could grind out a decision because Muhammad's good defensively. But, yeah, he's an old man, and wrestling is exhausting, dude. Look at Yusuf Zalal. He tried to take down Woodson 17 times, and a guy that trains at elevation is known for his conditioning. He completely gassed out in the 3rd round because offensive wrestling is exhausting. So with every takedown attempt that he's unsuccessful on, the probability just goes higher and higher and higher that he's going to get starched eventually.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's an interesting fight, interesting pay-per-view fight. I mean, looking forward to it, I guess. Not a fight I really asked for, but I'll watch it. I'll pay for it. It's all good. But yeah, I'm going to go with Muhammad as far as the pick goes, and Muhammad by decision. Do want to shout out everybody in the chat. Thank you all for hanging out so much. First show, I feel like it's going really well. About 65 in here right now. If you guys can please be so kind to hit the like button if you do enjoy what we're doing here. I'm planning on doing this week after week after week and going balls deep. We're going balls deep into the stats. I know stats on everything. You got to look into the tape. You got to look into the matchup. But I think going over the stats, especially early, is a great way to get our feet wet for the upcoming card. And it's fun talking with the chat, fun talking with our Uncle Weezy as well. So really do appreciate all the likes and hoping for at least 100. Let's get 100 for the show. I think we can do it. So let's get it. So we'll get into the first of the 3 5-round fights. And we have the first one is going to be Leon Edwards going against Nate Diaz. It is indeed a 5-round fight. We have Leon Edwards, who is 29 years old, 6'2", 74-inch reach. He's going to be at a 2-inch reach disadvantage, but a 2-inch height advantage. And we have Nate Diaz, who is 36 years old, going to be 7 years older. He's 6 foot, 76-inch reach. As far as the last 5 go for Edwards, we have the no contest against Belal Muhammad in a fight that he was looking good in. I thought he was going to win that fight. Thought he was on his way to probably going to win that fight, but it got stopped due to a cut on the eye. I do believe eye poke. And then we had a win against Rafael dos Anjos, phenomenal win there. And then a win against Gunnar Nelson, split decision, a win against Donald Cerrone, and a win against Peter Sabata. So he is 4-0 and 1 no contest in his last 5. As far as Nate Diaz goes, not many fights, according to like the years, he's not very active, but in his last 5, he lost to Jorge Masvidal in a TKO, which I believe was a cut stoppage, beat Anthony Pettis, lost to Conor McGregor, and he beat McGregor, and then he beat Michael Johnson. So I'm very curious to hear the stats on this one, Uncle Weezy.
Yeah, this is a great one. This is a legend against an up-and-comer. Edwards has been around for a minute, though. He had such a long layoff, and then he comes back, and then there's an eye poke. So that was a shame, But he's getting one of the toughest, old school mixed martial artists that ever lived, man, in Nate Diaz. And I can't wait. I can't wait for this fight, man. 344 minutes of cage time for Nate Diaz, 252 for Edwards, both super experienced. very interesting that they're both southpaws. And I did not look into this yet, but one of the things that I want to look at is how many southpaws Nate Diaz has beaten and how many southpaws Leon Edwards has beaten. Because both these guys are great boxers. And you don't get to see the southpaw versus southpaw matchup very often. They're usually throwing their power hands against the opposite-handed fighters. So this is going to be one where both are going to be able to use their jab. Both are going to be able to use all the weapons that they have, but they don't probably see southpaws as often. But yeah, obviously Nate Diaz more experienced. In terms of finishing, Nate Diaz has an 80% overall finish rate, and it's the same in the UFC. 50% overall finish rate, but for Leon Edwards, but only 30% of his UFC fights he's finished. And then in terms of being finished, Leon Edwards has never been finished, and Nate Diaz has been finished in 25% of his overall losses. His only finished losses in the UFC came by KO. Striking stats, Leon Edwards, 2.56 out of 5.34 for a 47% accuracy. And we got Diaz with 4.64 out of 10.48 for a 44% accuracy. Edwards showing more power at 0.32 knockdowns per 15 minutes as opposed to Diaz, 0.2. Both these guys pretty solid defensively. Leon lands 2.5, only absorbs 2.03. Diaz lands 4.64, only absorbs 4.05. Diaz's opponents have been higher volume, as well as Nate is much higher volume than Leon Edwards. And if we see here that Edwards' fights, almost 50% take place in control time and about 47% for Diaz. So I think it's interesting that Diaz is doubling up Edwards' volume, despite the fact that both of them spend about the same amount of time in control time. So Nate Diaz is definitely going to be the busier striker in this one. In terms of takedowns, 55 takedown attempts in 13 fights for Edwards, so he definitely goes for them. He's got a 31% accuracy, averages 1.35 takedowns per 15 minutes. Nate Diaz has got a really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu game, but he's not known for his ability to actually get the fight to the ground. Not a great offensive wrestler. 68 takedown attempts in 25 fights, 26.47% accuracy, less than one takedown per 15 minutes, but a lot more submission attempts. Obviously, Nate's got a lot of submissions. Leon Edwards, 26% control time. Nate Diaz, only 15. And Nate Diaz has been controlled by his opponents twice as much as he's controlled them. So definitely a path to victory to wrestle Nate Diaz, not get caught in the submission. He's easy to take down. His takedown defense is 44%. That's terrible. All right, 50 out of 90. So 2.55 times per 15 minutes, Nate Diaz is getting taken down. So if Leon Edwards doesn't like how it's going on the feet, he could take Nate down. And Leon Edwards has only been submitted once. Or wait, no, he's never been submitted. My fault. He's never been finished and he's never been submitted. So I'm seeing definitely a path to victory here for Leon on the feet potentially. But if he doesn't like how it's going on the feet, he could definitely get it to the ground. Leon Edwards has fought the better competition overall. 2.1 win-to-loss ratio as opposed to 1.44 for Nate. 12.38 total fights for Edwards' opponents on average as opposed to 16 for Nate. So a little more experienced opponent for Nate, but a little bit better win-loss record for Edwards' opponents. The wins are better for Edwards. The losses are way better for Edwards, as he's got an 8.5 ratio in his losses. So Leon Edwards is only losing to the absolute best competition. What is it, Kamaru Usman and one other? Did he even lose another fight? He's got. Yeah,
I think he lost to. Believe it or not, I think he lost to who was it? Claudia Silva.
That's right. He lost to Hannibal Silva. That's right. Yeah. That was really early. My God, how did Hannibal get that win, man? He looked awful against Court.
Yeah,
but he was younger then. I mean, I think Hannibal Silva is in his 70s now. So
80s.
Yeah. Dude, you can. You're not going to win a lot of fights at that age. So, I see a strength of schedule advantage here for Edwards. I see a grappling advantage for Edwards in terms of being able to get the fight to the ground. Nate Diaz has some slick submissions though, so he's going to have to be careful if he wants to take it there. But if it stays on the feet, southpaw versus southpaw, Nate Diaz has got really good boxing, but like most boxers, he's heavy on his lead foot. He could get that calf kicked up pretty good, like McGregor did to him in the second match that they had. So, I think Edwards can win the striking battle. I definitely think he can win the grappling battle. I think he's fought the better level of competition. Neither one of these guys has been particularly active lately, but even Leon Edwards has been more active than Nate Diaz. So in terms of advantages here for Diaz, maybe a little bit of an experience advantage, but I kind of see everything else going Edwards' way. And the numbers kind of agree.
Yeah, I'm definitely on Edwards here for sure. The chat's bringing up a good point as well. You brought up some good points. We see the line, and Edwards is a big favorite, and rightfully so. Opened at -140, currently minus 525. I mean, I can't say I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that Diaz is more than past his prime. I think Edwards is somebody that's extremely talented. Has a lot of upside as well. I'd like to see him fight more. We saw him fight Belal Muhammad, and of course that eye poke and all that. But prior to that, he hadn't fought in a while. But he did look really good against Muhammad for as long as it lasts. I do expect him to win this fight against Diaz. I just don't know if he's going to finish Diaz, because Diaz is very, very tough to finish, and Edwards isn't much of a finisher. But like people are saying in the chat, there could be like a cut stoppage, because we do see Diaz cut open quite a bit. You never know. So,
dude, like Nate Diaz, you breathe on him and he bleeds.
Dude,
so he's been in so many fights, and he's got a lot of scar tissue. But the one thing I want to bring up is that let's not forget that Nate Diaz has elite conditioning. That this is a 5-round fight, and he's another dude. You could hit him in the head with a shovel, and he's not going to go down. So, there, even if let's say you're on Leon to win the fight, imagine what those 4th and 5th round finish props are going to be on a guy like Diaz, who's already like plus 400, plus 450. If this does go late, and then let's say like Leon runs out of gas, he can't take him down, and Nate Diaz is just going to keep throwing punches, keep touching you. You might want to hedge, because you're laying down so much money in order to get a little back on Edwards. Maybe those 4th and 5th round props on Nate Diaz might be a great way to hedge that thing.
Yeah, it could be something to look at. Edwards has had 2 5-round fights thus far in the UFC. Once against Donald Cerrone in a fight that he won, and then once against Rafael dos Anjos in a fight that he won as well. I was very, very impressed in that Rafael dos Anjos fight. I actually picked dos Anjos in that fight, picked against Leon Edwards, and he definitely proved me wrong in that one. But overall, good fight. Always a good time, seeing Diaz back in there. And Leon Edwards is a fan favorite himself. It should be a good fight. 3rd fight on the main card there. So next we'll get into the co-main event, a fight that I'm looking forward to, a fight that we also already saw, but I think there's some interesting points to bring up about this matchup. So Deiveson Figueiredo, 33 years old, 5'5", 68-inch reach. Brandon Moreno, 27 years old, 5'7", 70-inch reach. So right off the tail of the tape, you see that there are some advantages for Moreno. Moreno is 6 years younger. Moreno's going to have a 2-inch height advantage, and Moreno's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. Some things I want to point out. I think a lot of people are going to look at the line and say, hey, man, this is off. These guys just got a draw. But after going back and watching the fight, there was a point taken away from Deiveson, which at that point was not taken away. He wins the fight. And then Deiveson was actually, I think he was in the hospital the night before the fight, and then he went back to the hospital after the fight. So I don't know what happened. Was it weight cutting issues or what? But this guy was in the hospital like the night before. So you got to think that hopefully he's not in the hospital this time. And I do think if everything goes right with the weight cut and all that, I do think this is a really good fight for Figueiredo. I like Moreno. I think he's a good style, but we're going to see, and you can see who's landing the much, much harder shots, and that is going to be Deiveson Figueiredo. I thought the commentary, I went back and watched that fight last night. I thought the commentary for this fight was extremely biased. Joe Rogan said that Figueiredo was hurt at least like 10, 20 different times for no reason. He was like, he's hurt, and Deiveson Figueiredo is just standing there perfectly fine, and he's like, he's hurt. I'm like, what are you talking about? Anyway, I like Figueiredo. We'll get into the stats a little bit more, but it should be a really fun fight, as was the last one.
Oh, for sure. I mean, these guys are super fun to watch, and one of the things that you brought up, it's a very good point, is Figueiredo's huge for 125. So especially if he's a favorite, sometimes you want to wait till that dude weighs in to make sure that he looks good, because he can have a bad weight cut and it can definitely affect him. But we see that Moreno actually here, kind of surprising, a lot more cage time than Figueiredo. 25 fights for Moreno, 22 for Figueiredo. really great record, 21-1 for Figueiredo.
Yes.
272 minutes of cage time as opposed to 155 for Figueiredo, and that's in 10 years for Brandon Moreno and 9 years for Figueiredo. So the cage time in the UFC, Figueiredo 11 fights, Moreno 10, but Moreno has more cage time because Figueiredo more of a finisher. We see that Figueiredo 85% overall finish rate for a flyweight. That's incredible. And Brandon Moreno, 56% of his overall wins by sub, a 73% finish rate overall. And neither one of these guys has ever been finished. So that's something you look at. They're both tough as nails. They both got Figueiredo's got that great power, but Moreno's got a really slick submission game as well. But these guys have never been finished, so you might want to look at Fico's decision prop. But here we go. Look at the striking statistics, and we see that Figueiredo's got a ton of power, and he's more accurate than Moreno. 3.38 out of 5.99 for a 56% striking accuracy for Figueiredo, while 3.41 landed out of 8.79 for Moreno. So Moreno's more active, but a 38% striking accuracy as compared to 56 for Figueiredo. So, and then also Figueiredo showing elite power for a flyweight and an over 2% knockdown per significant strikes landed. That's probably the best in the division. 1.05 knockdowns per 15 minutes, serious power. But Moreno, actually, he's gotten some knockdowns too, 0.41% for 0.21 per 15 minutes. Figueiredo and Moreno both absorb about as many strikes per minute as they dish out. But Brandon Moreno, a 59% striking defense as opposed to only 50% for Figueiredo. So while we see that Figueiredo is the more accurate striker, Moreno is the better defensive strike. He's better defensively striking, while Moreno is less accurate. Figueiredo is worse defensively. So some of that might kind of work itself out, but definitely Figueiredo's got the power here. In terms of grappling, 24 takedown attempts in 11 fights for Figueiredo for a 50% takedown accuracy. That's really good. 1.57 per 15 minutes, 2.36 sub attempts for 15 minutes. So when he's on the ground, he's super active. And we got a 19.8% control time for Figueiredo. And we look at Moreno, 19 out of 42 on his takedown attempts. So he's averaging 4.2 takedown attempts per fight. He likes to grapple, 45% takedown offense. That's good. Over 2 per 15 minutes, 0.64 per 15 minutes in the subs, and a 23% control time. Let's see, the takedown defense, pretty good for both of these guys, over 60%, 61% for Figueiredo, 67% for Moreno. They both face a decent amount of takedown attempts. Figueiredo about 4 per fight, and Moreno about 3.7. So their takedown defense has been tested quite a bit. And Figueiredo, about the same time he controls his opponents as he gets controlled, and Moreno controls his opponents about twice as much time as they control him. So Moreno slightly more active getting takedowns, slightly better takedown defense, slightly better control time ratio. So maybe he gets the grappling advantage, but we know that Deiveson has improved quite a bit on the ground as well. So we can't count him out down there, and he could get a sub too, even though neither of these guys has ever been finished. So if we look at the strength of schedule, very much the same. 2 to 1.97 in favor of Figueiredo, 10.64 to 9.2 in terms of total fights. Slightly more experienced competition for Figueiredo, but it's negligible. Figueiredo's losses are better, 2.13 ratio as opposed to 1.59 for Moreno. 10 total fights as opposed to 9.5. So definitely the better wins. Losses are a little bit better for Moreno in terms of 1.75 ratio in his losses as opposed to 1.14 for Figueiredo. But I think it's been a minute since anybody's beaten Figueiredo. So, Figueiredo's slight edge in the strength of schedule, definitely a power edge. Moreno maybe a little bit of a grappling edge, but we got to see how he weighs in, how Figueiredo looks on weigh-in day. And if he looks good and we know that he's on weight and he had a good weight cut, I think I like Moreno here because that power is just such a huge advantage. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
And I think it'll stick out to the judges as well. The power, it makes a huge difference. We see who's landing the harder shots. I do think Moreno can take down Figgy, but Figgy's get-up game has improved tremendously. So takedown defense is solid. I just think if the weight cut goes good, if everything goes good, this is a fight that Figgy really should win. But I'm not sure if he finishes Moreno. Moreno's chin is like out of this world, but at the same time, Figgy can hit like a truck. So I don't know. Is his chin going to hold up this time? Was kind of interested when I saw the lines on this one. So they actually have about all the props out here now. And we take a look at, fight doesn't go to decision is plus 105. A fight goes to decision is actually minus 135. So the odds makers are thinking that, just like the last one, this one goes to decision as well. I don't know if I'd have the balls to play that personally with a guy like Deiveson Figueiredo, but I kind of see him winning by decision as well. Moreno's just very, very tough. He has a good chin. I think he's going to be landing the harder shots. I think the striking is going to be somewhat competitive, but we're going to be able to tell who's landing the harder shots. I think as far as the grappling goes, I think it's pretty similar. Maybe Figgy can get a submission, but then again, Moreno's very hard to submit himself. So give me Figgy by decision. A knockout would not shock me, but I'll take Figgy by decision. As far as like a parlay piece, I think it's fine. Maybe people will start betting on Moreno because they look and see that it's a draw, but we got to take into, the other facts that he was in the hospital the night before and after the fight. And then also he did lose that point. If he did not lose that point, he would have won the fight. So I think those are all important. I'm taking Figgy for the win. But yeah, really looking forward to that fight. And now it's time. It's time for the main event. Before we get into it, if you guys can leave a like if you have not yet. Also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio, going live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be live on Pub Sports on Tuesday as well at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time as well. So lots going on. But, we have a main event here, and it's a good one. We have the rematch. Adesanya going against Vettori. We have Adesanya. He was 31 years old, 6'4", 80-inch reach, going against Vettori, 27 years old, 6 foot, 74-inch reach. Very curious to hear your thoughts about this, Uncle Weez. Before we do so, getting into the strength of schedule, the last 5, we have the opponents for Adesanya. He lost to Blachowicz in a fight that, again, somebody said in the chat, the commentary was so biased. Like Adesanya was clearly losing the fight, and they were acting like Adesanya was up like 3-1 in that fight at times. He knocked out Paulo Costa in a fight that was very underwhelming as far as the Costa side goes. I thought it would be a little bit more competitive, but Costa just did not come with any urgency. And then Romero, which could be the worst fight in UFC history. He was able to beat him there by landing barely nothing. And then he knocked out Robert Whittaker, good win there, and then beat Kevin Gastelum in one of the best fights I've ever seen personally. As far as Vettori goes, he beat Kevin Holland, took him down like a good 10 or 11 times, beat Jack Hermanson, solid win there. He beat Carl Roberson in the first round, and then he beat Andrew Sanchez, and then he beat Cesar Ferreira. So, man, I'm a big fan of both these guys. I really like the improvements we're seeing from Marvin Vettori. Adesanya, his striking's phenomenal, and I think it's going to come down to a striker versus grappler here, but Weezy, take it away with the stats.
Yeah, man. We'll just skip over pro and UFC experience because they're almost the same, in terms of total fights, cage time, average fight time, length of career. And in the UFC, they both have 10 fights, not much to see there. They're very evenly matched in that area. Adesanya, obviously the striker here and 75% overall KO rate. He's never subbed anyone. Vettori, 53% sub rate, so it's fair to call him the grappler, right? And then 12% of his wins by KO. So, yeah, this is classic striker versus grappler. The numbers on Adesanya's striking, 3.95 landed, 7.93 attempted for about 50% accuracy, while Vettori lands 4.14 out of 9.24 for a 44% accuracy. That power for Adesanya with the power and precision, 1.73% knockdown per total significant strikes landed. You got 1.02 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So, Adesanya definitely the striking advantage. One of the things that people won't talk about, though, with Vettori that's very important, 66.25% striking defense. I think that's tops in the middleweight division. I'll have to go back to my database and sort it. But Marvin Vettori's striking defense is elite for the division. Something, if you're on the Vettori side, that's something you can hang your hat on as a reason to bet him. Because Adesanya is going to beat you with his striking, but I think that Vettori's striking defense is better than Adesanya's grappling defense. And we're going to find out about that here because, Israel Adesanya has never gotten a takedown in the UFC, nor will he try to get one in this fight. But Vettori, 22 of 41 on his takedown attempts, 53.66% accuracy. He averages 2.22 per 15 minutes, 0.81 sub attempts. He controls his opponents 29% of the time, while he only gets controlled 8% of the time. So, Vettori, there's clearly a path to victory here if he gets those takedowns. However, we got to look at, Adesanya's takedown defense. He's successfully defended 47 out of 57 takedown attempts for 82.46% takedown defense. 0.93 times he gets taken down per 15 minutes. He's been controlled 12% of his UFC career, which is pretty damn good for a striker, because clearly dudes are trying to take this guy down. 57 takedown attempts against him in 10 fights, and he's only been controlled 12%. So his takedown defense has been working for him very well thus far. The only place we really didn't see it work well for him was at 205 pounds fighting the champion. In terms of the strength of schedule here, we got a 3 ratio for Adesanya and over 2 ratio for Vettori. Both of these guys are fighting stellar competition. Adesanya, 13.2 total fights as opposed to 9.2 for Vettori with his competition. So Adesanya's beating the better competition and the more experienced competition. He has better losses and more experienced losses at 3.18 ratio as opposed to 2. And then the wins. The wins are better for Adesanya than Vettori, and the losses are slightly better for Vettori than they are for Adesanya, but Adesanya has fought the more experienced competition in all 3 categories there. So, striker versus grappler, man, this is going to be interesting. Is Adesanya's takedown defense going to hold up? If it does, can Vettori, use his striking defense and move and, try to find a way to get this fight to the ground? Because as good as he is defensively, I don't think he's good enough offensively to win a striking battle.
No.
But, as long as Adesanya's takedown defense holds up, he should be fine. But Marvin Vettori's not stupid. He's not going to just strike with him for 25 minutes. That's not what he's going to do. So, I like Vettori here, man. He's super smart. He's got great cage IQ. He's tough. I like everything there is to like about Vettori, and this is going to be a hell of a fight, man. And if Vettori can take down Adesanya in the first couple of rounds, really kind of get those arms filling up with blood, this could be very interesting. So, I'm leaning Adesanya here just because I think if his takedown defense does hold up, he should cruise. But Vettori's not going to just let him box with him. So.
Yeah, I mean, this fight is it's a close fight. It's a really close fight, and you wouldn't be able to tell that just by looking at the line. You have Adesanya, who opened up -240, currently -245. Vettori is plus 205, opened up plus 180. And there's going to be people parlaying Adesanya. There's going to be people that think that Adesanya is the most confident pick on the slate. And I don't know. I don't think Marvin Vettori, he's awful. I think he has a good skill set. I think that that significant strike defense really did open my eyes because I was not expecting it to be that good. But it's an interesting fight, man, because Adesanya clearly has the advantage on the feet, but Marvin Vettori clearly has the advantage on the mat. What I don't like on the Vettori side is the possible cardio concerns. We did see him slow down a little bit in the Holland fight. We saw him slow down in multiple fights before. And it's like we talked about earlier. It is, taxing on your cardio to, if you go for a takedown and you can't get it, if the takedown's stuffed, we saw in this law fight, if the takedown is stuffed and you can't get it, it expends a ton of energy. And I can just see, Vettori trying to get a lot of takedowns. If Adesanya can, stuff those takedowns, stuff the majority of them, I really have concerns about what Marvin Vettori looks like the later this fight goes. And that's why ultimately I am going to take Adesanya, but I do think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I do think Vettori can even steal a couple rounds. I think he can win, some of the, one of the first, couple 3 rounds here, but I just have concerns after the fight goes on, Adesanya making him work. Adesanya's takedown defense is a million times better than Kevin Holland's. This is not Kevin Holland. But do I want to lay the minus 245 on Adesanya? Absolutely not, because I can see a path to victory for Marvin Vettori. Maybe he does get him down. Maybe he can even sub him. Marvin Vettori has a legit submission game as well. But ultimately, I will side with Adesanya. You just don't really like the line. I'll take a look at the props here. We have the fight goes to decision is actually juiced to minus 155. So they are thinking this goes to the distance. Kind of with him. Marvin Vettori has some type of crazy chin on him. I don't see Adesanya knocking him out unless like Vettori gets like extremely gassed or something. So maybe like a late finish for Adesanya. As far as Adesanya, maybe Vettori can submit him early. I don't know. I just see it probably going the distance, but something to think about there. I'll pick Adesanya. I don't feel great about the line, but I'm really looking forward to watching this fight.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one, man. And you know what? These guys hate each other's guts too, so it's always a little more fun when that happens too. So I'm looking forward to all these fights, man. This is always fun. Getting into the stats this early in the week's a real treat for me because now it's got me fired up for the. I'm going to be like, Saturday's too far away now.
Dude, I know. But yeah, I had fun. I think the show is fantastic. Around 2 hours. That's kind of where we want to keep it here. Thank you all so much for hanging out in the chat. Really do appreciate you guys making the debut. Like I said, if you guys do like this content, please leave it a like. Really do appreciate the likes. Also subscribe if you have not. I think we're getting close to that 100 like mark already, which is awesome. I'm planning on doing this Sunday after Sunday. If you guys like it, if you guys keep coming back, we'll keep doing it here. So what I got going on Monday on my channel, DFS by the Numbers on YouTube, planning on having a main event breakdown going further into depth, probably with Uncle Weezy as well. So we're going to be posted on Monday. My full card breakdown video out on Tuesday. I have a live stream on my channel on Friday, a live stream on my channel Saturday before the fights. So a lot going on. And also the Tuesday show on Pub Sports Radio as well, where I'll be giving my picks, DraftKings, bets, all the good stuff. And then as far as Uncle Weezy, I'll let you tell him Uncle Weezy. But yeah, go check out Uncle Weezy on his YouTube. He does, the same kind of thing here, but he goes more into depth on a single matchup is what he's been doing. So Uncle Weezy, go ahead and tell him about that.
Yeah, just check me out at the YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I've been posting, about 20-minute videos on each fight. Not every fight, but definitely the fights where we got a lot of data to look at and kind of just go balls deep into the numbers like we've been doing all day here today. So check me out there. I'll be continuing to break down fights on my channel, and I'm also planning some kind of DraftKings show because I have a lot of numbers in terms of metrics of how these fighters perform in DraftKings that I think might be useful for some people. So I'm planning that in the future as well. But I'd just like to say thanks, Brady, for having me on this show. Thanks to Pub Sports Radio for letting us do this for you guys. And thanks to every one of you that showed up today, that commented, that gave a thumbs up, that just watched us and listened. Thank you so much.
Heck yeah. I mean, I'm pumped up for the card already. I can't wait to get into the tape tomorrow, get all the tape out of the way and get my breakdown video out there. But yeah, it was fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next week and be sure to tune into all the content on Pub Sports. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we will see you guys very, very soon.